Chapter 127. Luo Peishan expressed his pity for the Gong Prince. Li Hongyuan seemed to have seen through Luo Peishan's thoughts. Luo Darren can still take pity on Li Hongyi. After all, in his eyes, Qin Tianming is loyal to him. This is probably one of the few things he can be proud of. Luo Peishan was silent. On the surface, he was suppressed by this person, so he could only take a detour. In the dark, he was also poached, schemed against, and framed, but he couldn't find the real culprit, so he was fiercely fighting with others. Each and every one of them was sharpening their swords, preparing to deal with this person after ascending the throne. But they didn't know that they were all played in the palm of his hand. In his eyes, they were like jumping clowns. Thinking back to before. No, Wang Ye, this old official's granddaughter fell off the cliff at White Dragon Temple. Was it also your doing? That was an accident. Although it was an accident made by Ruan Fengfei, Wan Wan and the others were only implicated. How could Ben Wang joke with Wan Wan's life? The assassination was indeed prepared, but it happened to be Wan Wan's accident, so it was brought forward. Luo Peishan choked on a mouthful of old blood. You really can use everything to scheme against me. What unexpected saving grace. It was clearly a trick put on by this living king of hell, deliberately letting the third girl spend a night alone with him. If he really had his eyes on Wan Wan, according to this person's bad conduct, nothing happened. Luo Peishan wouldn't believe it even if he died. At most, it will be a kiss and a hug. Before the wedding, Ben Wang won't let Wan Wan lose her virginity. Then I really have to thank Wang Ye. Luo Peishan said through gritted teeth. We're family, you're welcome. Li Hongyuan said shamelessly. Who the fuck is your family? I can't afford it. Luo Peishan finally understood Lu Qingdi's mood when he was enraged by this king of hell. He really wanted to beat him up. Taking advantage of his good granddaughter, he still dared to say such shameless words? His skin was even thicker than those old foxes who had been in the government for decades. Farewell, Your Highness. It's getting dark, so Your Highness, please be careful of your steps. If one walked too much at night, one might bump into ghosts. Li Hongyuan nodded. Can I take it that Lord Luo is showing concern for his future grandson-in-law? Luo Peishan responded with two sneers. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan didn't know that he had sent people to Chi'an Prefecture's Luo family several years ago. He also didn't know that the most trusted person by Jingwan's side was once his people. In addition, he had many spies in the Luo family, both in the open and in the dark. If Luo Peishan knew about this, he might really be so angry that he would vomit blood. Li Hongyuan was too thick-skinned, so he didn't think much of it. Someone who was standing guard outside quickly came in and respectfully handed over a booklet. She didn't hear anything about her master being a Japanese, but the emperor strangling her master's mother to death was like a gust of wind in her ears. The risk of being valued was too great. Should she consider exchanging with someone else next time? Li Hongyuan took it and casually handed it to Luo Peishan. Lord Luo, take a look. It'll be helpful for you to control the Ministry of Personnel. Although Luo Peishan was furious, he didn't refuse this kindness. Lord Luo only needs to manage the Ministry of Personnel's affairs. You don't need to do anything else, including Jingwan's marriage. When the time comes, just let nature take its course and cancel it. Luo Peishan watched as Li Hongyuan quickly disappeared into the night. He couldn't help but think of two people, Qin Jingmin and Sun Yilin. In the past, he was still picking on them for snatching away his good grandson. But now he was full of sympathy for them. It was said that people were shrewd with age. How could he not see that they had fallen in love with his good grandson? Originally, to be able to get engaged with the girl he liked was already considered to have fulfilled his wish. He only needed to wait for 1 or 2 years to complete the last step. But just as he was feeling proud of his success, a bolt from the blue came. Think of Qin Jingmin, the grand scholar and the third scholar. In the end, he wasn't happy at all. If he didn't get over it, his future might even be delayed. In a situation where he didn't know the truth, he only thought that his luck was bad. But after knowing the truth, his luck was indeed very bad. Being regarded as a thorn in the flesh by the king of hell wasn't just bad luck from 8 lifetimes. There was also Sun Yilin. Originally, there was no hope. But now he had regained what he lost. Unfortunately, he didn't know that this was just an illusion. His happy marriage was actually a paving stone for someone else's fate. Right now he might still be happy, but who knows when his joy would turn to sorrow. Luo Peishan now felt particularly sorry for them. In fact, they were all good children. It was just that their hearts fell in love with someone they shouldn't have. If they didn't fall in love with third girl, perhaps they wouldn't. No, this admiration hurt the heart. If it wasn't admiration, they might not be able to escape unscathed. My family's girl is so good, why don't you put it in your heart? Luo Peishan believed that he had this kind of mentality. Standing from the perspective of the king of hell who never acted according to common sense, he might think that the person that Ben Wang could fancy you guys actually didn't fancy? This final outcome might not be any better than not admiring. Perhaps it was even more miserable. In short, as long as it was a paving stone chosen by the king of hell, then it was an unlucky person. In Luo Peishan's opinion, Jin Qinhuang should have prepared at least 2 more people. And according to the standards of the previous 2, he was afraid that they were all first-class young talents. It should be said that Jin Qinhuang really had deep feelings for his own good grandson. The people he chose were all the objects of admiration of countless women in the boudoir. This stepping stone had to be chosen to be the most outstanding. Really, he couldn't help but be convinced. Although in fact Jingwan's 2 marriages the men were chosen by themselves. But if a certain person wasn't satisfied, then he was afraid that before the engagement, it would be ruined. Sigh. Luo Peishan collected his drifting thoughts and returned to the desk before slowly opening the booklet. On it were some matters of the Ministry of Personnel. The more Luo Peishan read, the more alarmed he became. In this Ministry of Personnel, at least half of the people were loyal to Jin Qinhuang. From top to bottom, there were people in charge of all aspects. It could be said that although Jin Qinhuang wasn't in the Ministry of Personnel, but the situation in the Ministry of Personnel, no one could be clearer than him. Thus, even if they were loyal to the same master, they might not know each other's secret identities. At this moment, Luo Peishan felt pity for Prince Rui. He had been in the Ministry of Personnel for nearly a year and had spent countless efforts. The result was that it didn't reach his expectations. More than half of the people he roped in were Jin Qinhuang's people. How was this assistance? It was clearly destructive. He would never be able to obtain the most real thing. Everything he knew was 90% true and 1 false. False things weren't usually obvious, but at crucial times, any bit of wrong information could cause failure. If the Ministry of Personnel was like this, then what about other places? Luo Peishan didn't believe that he hadn't interfered. However, Luo Peishan was becoming more and more fearful of Li Hongyuan's methods. Without any advantage, without anyone's support, he was able to reach this point alone. This was too frightening. To make an enemy out of this person, even if one had heaven-defying luck, they might not necessarily be able to compete with him. Moreover, for him to be able to reach this point, his luck certainly wasn't bad. He took advantage of the right time and place and forcefully reversed the harmony of people. It could be said that he was invincible. Prince Rui, who he thought was pretty good before, was instantly reduced to dregs by Jin Qinhuang. He was afraid that even if they joined forces, they still wouldn't be able to compete with him. If he had Luqing Emperor's support, perhaps he would already be the rightful crown prince. What a pity, the devil. It was just that. Misfortune may be a blessing in disguise. If Jin Qinhuang's birth mother was still alive, he would be the true son of heaven, pampered by his parents, flattered by all kinds of people around him. Then perhaps he would be far from his current achievements. Luo Peishan silently burned the booklet. His own good grandson, would she really marry such a man in the future? And would such a man really guard a woman for a lifetime? It was said that the best was what couldn't be obtained. Wan wasn't married to him now, so he schemed so he could guard her. But in the future, after he got what he wanted, perhaps that love from the dream would fade little by little. He would become like the other emperors with a harem of 3,000 beauties? Luo Peishan softly sighed. Facing this one, he could only do whatever he said. There was no room for resistance. However, Jin Qinhuang, this person, was forbearing and flamboyant. This kind of person often kept his word. Whatever he said he could basically do. Perhaps that good grandson of his really had this kind of luck? Luo Peishan thought through this and gradually put down his worries. Besides, it was already set in stone, there was no use for him to worry now. As for the taboo of the devil, Luo Peishan didn't care at all. Seeing that the booklet had completely turned to ashes, his manservant hurriedly came in and knelt down with a plop. "It's been so long, where have you been?" Luo Peishan asked without batting an eyelid. Laoi, this one accidentally fell asleep, this one deserves to die, this one. Alright, get up. It's getting late, go prepare and rest. Yes. Most likely he didn't fall asleep but was drugged. The next day, because there was no morning court, Luo Peishan directly went to the Ministry of Personnel Yamen. Along the way, many people saw that he was calm and composed, without the slightest bit of melancholy. Was it really so, or was it a forced act? In fact, they could more or less see it. Thus, many people looked at each other in dismay. What was going on? Yesterday, after the morning court, they could clearly feel that when he saw Li Hongming, the other party smiled at him. Luo Peishan smiled even more sincerely. When Li Hongming asked him to take care of him, Luo Peishan's witty words were even more slippery. Li Hongming's face was still smiling, but in his heart he wasn't so happy. What was going on? Could it be that without him knowing, Li Hongyi's side made a move? Not only did they resolve the misunderstanding, but their relationship also quickly became harmonious in a short period of time. Chapter 128. Could Luo Peishan's control of the Ministry of Personnel be hindered or even stopped by multiple obstacles? Not to mention Luo Peishan's own abilities, just the fact that he had such a prospective grandson-in-law was like a cheat code. He already had a good grasp of the entire situation in the Ministry of Personnel Affairs. Did you think that he wouldn't know anything just because his subordinates refused to answer him when he asked about something? It didn't matter if they didn't tell him. Luo Peishan was happy and didn't express anything. He would give him 2 days to slowly familiarize himself with the situation. When the time came, they wouldn't say that he was a new official who made drastic changes. It would be too painful for them to burn their own heads. However, there were a few people who felt that the way their superior looked at them was strange, as if there was a hidden meaning in his gaze. There were those who were upright and plain-spoken and were very calm. However, there were also those who had ulterior motives. They couldn't help but wonder if their secret had been discovered. In short, it was very annoying. Luo Peishan didn't think much of it. It was just that these people were all very good at acting. They were showing off their skills for their respective masters. But in reality, thinking back, sometimes they were just trying to trick their masters. This was a good way to gain enmity. As expected, none of the officials were simple. There was another person who wasn't very comfortable. That was Luo Peishan's eldest son-in-law, Yuan Qiaoqiao's father. Originally, if his father-in-law was his superior, he would be doing better. However, he was on Prince Rui's side. He had once wanted to pull his father-in-law to Prince Rui's side, but he didn't succeed. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, he rarely visited the Luo family. Previously, his mother-in-law wasn't around and his wife rarely returned home. But now his situation had become awkward. The most obvious point was that Prince Rui had distanced himself from him after the former minister of the Ministry of Personnel resigned. Luo Peishan spent half a day in the Ministry of Personnel Yamen, and he was very relaxed and happy. Luo Peishan's attitude was even more unfathomable. After a day, he should have felt the rejection of the entire Ministry of Personnel Yamen. He didn't panic at all. Was he really so calm? Or did he give up because he knew that he was in an awkward position? Prince Kong, who had been reprimanded by the Empress, reluctantly put down his dignity and came to Luo Peishan. Unfortunately, he was not sincere. He only said a few perfunctory words, but Luo Peishan also gave him a perfunctory answer. Prince Kong was furious. In his opinion, Luo Peishan was disloyal to him first. Now that he was willing to use him, he was giving him a lot of face. He should be showing his loyalty to him in fear and trepidation. Imperial Mother said that Lord Luo is a person who values relationships and family. Now it seems that it is not entirely true. Lord Luo is the same as most people. No, that's not right. He is far inferior to them. At least they will think about whether their daughters will have a good life in their in-laws' house. Luo Peishan smiled, but there was a bone-chilling coldness in his eyes. According to Your Highness, this old official's granddaughter hasn't entered the gate of Ding General Manor yet, but you are already planning to make her unhappy just like your aunt? It is said that nephews resemble their uncles. In your opinion, is this nephews resemble their aunts? These words were vicious. To put it lightly, Prince Kang's behavior was like that of a woman. To put it more seriously, he suspected Prince Kang's biological mother, or even that he was the son of the Empress who had stolen the dragon and was not Emperor Luqingdi's son. Luo Peishan. Prince Kong directly waved his fist at Luo Peishan. Fortunately, the person next to him reacted quickly and stopped him. Otherwise, this punch would have hit Luo Peishan. He was already so old. Who knew what kind of punishment he would suffer? It was possible that he would never be able to get up again. Luo Peishan's face became completely cold and Prince Kang's face was even more livid. Lord Luo, as expected of Lord Luo, Prince Kang flicked his sleeves and left. This time he probably wouldn't put down his face to ask for peace anymore. And the words, nephews resemble their aunts, quickly spread. It must be said that this Lord Luo was really not an ordinary kind of daring. However, even more people felt that Lord Luo was speaking the truth. Even if you are a Wangya, if you want to rope someone in, it's fine if you don't have a bit of sincerity. But the other person's granddaughter hasn't married yet and you're already threatening him. Isn't that the same as your aunts? This kind of words, unless someone deliberately said it, otherwise it wouldn't reach Emperor Lu Qingdi's ears. But it was different for other people. After Li Hongyuan, who was holed up in Jin Qin Wang Fu, heard this, he declined to comment on Luo Peishan's words. Regardless of whether he had one layer of meaning or two layers of meaning when it involved Wan, how could he let Li Hongyi off so easily? Therefore it could be said that Prince Kang would encounter another unknown misfortune. And when the servant came to report, Li Hongming, who had just made a round at the Ministry of Personal Yamen before returning to his fu, was currently holding a soft and warm jade in his arms. It wasn't anyone else, it was Luo Jingying. Dressed in luxurious clothes, her entire body was adorned with expensive jewelry. Leaning in Li Hongming's arms, the most important thing was that the corners of her eyes were bewitching. Her appearance, if a discerning person saw it, they would definitely be able to guess what had happened. Luo Jingying had already lost her chastity. Li Hongming saw a personal attendant not far away and gently whispered a few words in Luo Jingying's ear. Under Luo Jingying's affectionate gaze, Li Hongming got up and left. What is it? That personal attendant told Li Hongming the words that came in from outside in full detail. Nephews resemble their aunts? Li Hongming smiled very playfully. That idiot probably didn't even think of the second layer of meaning. Otherwise he wouldn't have given up so easily. Unfortunately, there's nothing to do about this. But Li Hongyi has pushed Luo Peishan even further, which is a great thing for this prince. Li Hongming glanced at Luo Jingying. Because the two of them had the most intimate relationship, Luo Jingying no longer concealed the look in her eyes. Li Hongming smiled gently on the surface, but in his heart Luo Jingying was no different from a prostitute in a brothel. She was a good girl, but she learned the art of sex. She was really not the ordinary kind of cheap. So this was how men were. They had clearly enjoyed it, but they felt that the girl was not chaste enough. You may leave. As for Luo Peishan, there was no need to call him in immediately. It still needed a gradual process. It would be best if Luo Peishan struggled for a while and realized that he couldn't control the Ministry of Personnel. It wouldn't be too late to reach out then. Then he could watch Li Hongyi continue to act. Before Li Hongyuan could turn around, another attendant came to report, Your Highness, the Princess Consort and concubine Wu came by just now. They only stood for a while before leaving. Don't worry about it. Li Hongming was very confident in his own inner court. Everyone was very tactful about what they should do and what they shouldn't do. However, after spending half a day on Luo Jingying, he felt that it was a waste of time. Li Hongming walked to Luo Jingying's side and sat down. Luo Jingying naturally snuggled into his arms. Li Hongming touched her face and said gently, this prince will have someone send you back. Luo Jingying was stunned, but I don't want to leave. I can't bear to part with your highness. This prince also can't bear to part with you, but if you go back late and your family finds out, what will you do? Does your highness not want this concubine, this subject's family to know? She looked up at Li Hongming and was about to cry. Li Hongming hurriedly kissed her eyes. Of course, but this prince doesn't want Immerse's reputation to be damaged. This prince wants Immerse to enter the Jin Wangfu openly. Give this prince some time. This prince will definitely let Immerse enter the Rui Wangfu openly. Luo Jingying changed back to her original clothes with the help of the maidservants. Although she didn't change out of her undergarments, Luo Jingying still felt that the original clothes were not right. She couldn't help but look at the magnificent clothes. When could she wear it openly? However, she didn't think about it. Even if she entered the Rui Wangfu and Li Hongming gave her the title of concubine, she would only be a concubine. She wouldn't even have the right to return home. Without Rui Wangfei, she wouldn't even be able to leave the second door of the Rui Wangfu. How could she wear it out to show off? Before entering the Rui Wangfu, she wouldn't have the guts to wear it even if Li Hongming gave her a lot of good cloth. She didn't know if there was a hole in her brain. The servant girl who served her was unusually respectful, but in her heart she was extremely disdainful of her. She had never seen such a short-sighted person, nor had she seen such a shameless person. In fact, the maidservants in the Rui Wangfu rarely thought of climbing into the bed. Because anyone who knew Li Hongming's true temperament knew that even if they succeeded, they wouldn't have the glory and wealth they dreamed of. So, what was the difference between a good official's daughter and a prostitute doing this kind of thing? It was said that she was the granddaughter of the new minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs. The Luo family was a scholarly family with a century-old reputation. If he knew that he had such a disgraceful granddaughter, would he beat her to death directly? Luo Jingying quietly returned to the mansion from the back door. The old maidservant who guarded the door finally felt relieved. It was not a good thing for a girl to go out secretly. If it was known, she would be the first one who couldn't escape. Luo Jingying's etiquette instructor calmly took over the big bag in Luo Jingying's hand. It was not light. When Luo Jingying went out, she was empty-handed. This was a big gain. She turned around and was about to take Luo Jingying back to the third branch. The old maidservant who guarded the door grabbed her, but we agreed that it would be just this once. If she hadn't been caught by the old woman, she wouldn't have dared to do such a thing. The etiquette instructor pushed her hand away, took out a silver ingot worth 10 taels from her sleeve and threw it to her. "I'll bother you next time." The old maidservant was so angry that her liver hurt. However, she really didn't dare to expose it. Luo Jingying saw this but didn't say anything. The etiquette instructor took Luo Jingying to a secluded place and took a big detour before returning to the third branch. Fortunately, they didn't meet anyone along the way. Luo Jingying immediately relaxed. "Fourth sister, what are you wearing? Did you come back from outside?" Luo Jingying was shocked when she suddenly heard Jingwan's voice. She felt guilty and scared. "Luo Jing, why are you here?" "Fourth sister, how can you call your older sister by her name?" Sun Yijiao looked at Luo Jingying and said unhappily. Luo Jingying was anxious and angry. Perhaps Sun Yijiao had a deep influence on her in the past, so she didn't dare to refute. "This servant greets third young madam and third young Mississippi, fourth young miss." Jingwan waved her hand. "Third sister-in-law, let's go." Obviously, she didn't want to listen to their nonsense. After Jingwan and Sun Yijiao walked away, why did they come to the third branch? Chapter 129. You're getting married tomorrow? Luo Jingying was startled. She had completely forgotten about this. However, Luo Jingying felt that she couldn't be blamed for this. It was because the residence was too quiet. If it was as lively as her third brother's wedding, even the dead would know about it. She couldn't help but sneer, "She's just a bastard born of a concubine. Naturally, she's not worthy of our attention." "Miss, you should go back and change your clothes first. We still need to add some dowry to second Mrs. Dowry." Luo Jingying walked towards her courtyard. "Nanny, just pick something and send it over. She doesn't have the face to make this miss go personally." Her good mood was half ruined because she saw someone she hated. However, after opening the bundle and seeing the good things she dreamed of, Luo Jingying couldn't help but smile happily. Her etiquette instructor stood silently to the side. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't moved by those good things. However, she was an old person after all. Her desire for these things was very weak. The only thing she wanted now was to see the Lu family return to its former glory. She didn't say anything in the face of open-minded and brainless Luo Jingying. In any case, it seemed that her body was already ruined. Even if third miss suspected that she had gone out and informed old madam, the matter was already settled. As long as she was still valuable to Prince Rui wouldn't sit idly by. On the other side, Jingwan and Sun Yijiao were walking hand in hand. "Little sister Wan, fourth sister doesn't seem to be right." Sun Yijiao frowned slightly and was somewhat worried. Of course, she wasn't worried about Luo Jingying herself. As the saying goes, if one person prospers, the whole family prospers, and if one person suffers, the whole family suffers. Something happened to Luo Jingying, the one who would be implicated would be the young lady of the Luo family and even the entire Luo family. As for Luo Jingying, there was nothing worth paying attention to. Not to mention, Sun Yijiao had seen plenty of people like her. As for the grudge between her and Wan Jingying, she already understood most of it. To be honest, the origin of the conflict was simply inexplicable and unreasonable. Jingwan, on the other hand, didn't care that much. Sunny Jia might not know what Luo Jingying did, but she had a pretty good guess. Perhaps she hadn't personally experienced it, but in her opinion, it was simply vulgar for a lady of the boudoir to sneak out wearing a maid's clothes. There was a 99% chance that she was meeting her lover. He had no idea who the other party was. Just tell grandmother. We don't need to care about this kind of thing. Third Miss Luo was very relaxed now. Although, after careful consideration, it should be possible to roughly guess Luo Jingying's date. There were only a few people who could catch the eye of the arrogant Luo Jingying and dare to reach out to her. You're right. We don't need to care about it. Sunny Jia smiled. Today Wan Jingying seemed to have changed a little. He seemed to be more casual. She couldn't help but think of what old madam said when she rushed to the flower garden yesterday. This small change should be a good thing. Jingwan didn't even tell old Madame Luo personally. She just casually sent a maid. After that she didn't hear anything else. However, important guests came to the house. Yesterday, before she left the flower garden, her grandfather had already told her that a few shameless people would come to admire the flowers today. Of course, this adjective was summed up by Jingwan. Her grandfather didn't say it so directly, but it was the meaning behind his words. Thus, without saying anything, she directly asked the servants to carry the tricolor peony to the front yard. The servants by Luo Peishan's side came back. This was almost within Jingwan's expectations. According to the degree of those people's infatuation, as long as it was a rare and famous item, they would probably be fascinated by it and say hundreds and thousands of words of praise. Therefore, she waved her hand and asked them to move the other flowers, including Mo Lawn, away. However, Jingwan didn't expect that her grandfather's people would come for the third time. This time they didn't come to move the flowers but brought a person. A very unexpected person, the lotus flower that rose out of the water, Wan Fengfei. It had to be said that when she saw the gentle and moving smile of Wan Fengfei, Jingwan didn't even know what expression to put on for a moment. She had already suspected that this was a deeply hidden pervert. However, through some side understanding from Sunny Jia, Wan Fengfei shouldn't be the same as her. It seemed that there were no signs of rebirth. After all, her intelligence and elegance had always been within the scope of a woman in the boudoir. If she really was reborn, she should be thinking of ways to influence the situation outside the inner residence. In a situation where outsiders didn't know, she was imperceptibly influencing Wan Ruizhong? No, although Jingwan had only met Wan Ruizhong once or twice, but from the information she got from her grandfather Luo Peishan, she could basically infer that Wan Ruizhong was actually a very male chauvinist person. If it was only a small matter he wouldn't care, but if it involved the imperial court 8 or 9 times out of 10 he wouldn't talk about it in the inner residence. As a person who didn't transmigrate or rebirth, a girl in the inner residence, even if she was vicious and scheming, she could still find the source. But where did this pervert come from? Although it was possible that some people were really born with some mental illness, the fact was that the influence of the day after birth was greater, wasn't it? Wan Fengfei touched her face in confusion. Third Miss Luo is looking at me like this. Is there something on my face? Jingwan lightly hooked her lips and joked, it's just that I was bewitched by the sudden appearance of a beauty. Wan Fengfei probably didn't expect that Jingwan would speak like a lecturer to tease her, and her expression was clearly a little confused. Younger sister Wan, your mouth is still so sweet that it makes people want to pinch you all. Wan Fengfei turned around and saw that the seemingly arrogant Sunny Jia didn't put on any makeup, but her complexion was rosy and her brows were relaxed. It was obvious that she wasn't as cold as before, and it could be seen that she was living a good life. The more noble the status of a woman in the boudoir after marriage, there weren't many who could be more comfortable than in the boudoir. It should be said that 99% of women were like this, not to mention that Sunny Jia's face was disfigured, but she was living a better life than in the boudoir. It was really 1 in a million. It really made people jealous. Hello, third young Mistress Luo. Ho, Miss Wan. Sunny Jia calmly accepted the title of other people's child in the past, and even returned a rare smile. In fact, even if there was such a hideous scar on her face, Sunny Jia's charm wasn't damaged at all. Sunny Jia walked to Jingwan's side and reached out to pinch her face. Your mouth. Miss Wan, don't mind it. Younger sister Wan is like this and our family can't do anything to her. Jingwan looked at Sunny Jia with dissatisfaction. I'm telling the truth. It said that everyone loves beauty. I was just entranced by a great beauty. What did I do wrong? Wan Fengfei covered her mouth and laughed. For women, praise from another woman would probably please them even more. Moreover, with Wan Fengfei's status, even if there were many men who admired her, their praise would only be tactful. However, those things after hearing too much, there would always be a time when one would feel tired of it. This was the first time such a straightforward praise had been given. Even Wan Fengfei couldn't help but feel happy from the bottom of her heart. Well, for such an interesting person, wouldn't it be better to keep him alive and slowly deal with him? Just like the butterfly in the net, flying and struggling, it was so interesting. It was much better than slapping him to death. Jingwan inadvertently glanced at Wan Fengfei's eyes. Because she was covering her mouth and nose, her eyes were particularly prominent. People who didn't notice anything might think that it was particularly beautiful and shiny like a gem, but Jingwan felt that it was particularly scary. He couldn't help but want to swear, okay? Jingwan never liked to let unimportant people into her room unless it was a special situation. Similarly, she asked people to prepare the things and sat in the yard to chat. Because there were outsiders, Sun Yijia was still used to looking at her arrogantly. However, when she talked to Jingwan, she would involuntarily soften. Jingwan was used to it, but Wan Fengfei felt it was particularly obvious. No matter what, people like her had a common problem, which was to think that everyone should revolve around her. If someone's attitude towards everyone was the same, it would be better. However, if this person suddenly treated another person differently, and that person was not her, she would feel unhappy. In particular, these two people's attitudes were particularly intimate. Because the age difference between Sun Yijia and Wan Fengfei was very small, and the education they received since childhood was similar, it was reasonable to say that these two people should dislike each other and sympathize with each other from a certain point of view. However, when they really sat together, Jingwan found that their auras didn't match at all. It seemed that they didn't have any desire to chat. Therefore, Wan Fengfei pulled Jingwan to talk about flowers and trees, and Sun Yijia pulled her to talk about other things. The more they talked, the more uncomfortable it was. It was like two children competing for favor, and Jingwan obviously became the object of their competition. Jingwan dealt with it calmly, but she couldn't help but roll her eyes in her heart. These two people didn't compete in the past because they rarely got together. After this battle, their views of each other and their hearts would change. It wasn't difficult for Rui Ran to deal with two people who suddenly became childish, but after a long time she would still feel mentally tired. Speaking of which, it was Sun Yijia who was close to her that was the first to notice the trouble she brought to Jingwan. Therefore, she took the initiative to restrain herself and slowly became silent. Her family was still the only family that felt heartache. Young lady, master sent a message saying that it's time to go back. Wan Fengfei's mama said. Wan Fengfei looked at the sky. So much time has passed without us noticing. I wanted to talk to young lady Luo before, but I didn't have the chance. Fortunately, I came with my father today, otherwise I would have missed it. Young lady Luo, how about we go out for a walk in a few days' time? She looked at Jingwan rather hopefully. Jingwan smiled, sure. After sending Wan Fengfei off, Sun Yijia frowned. What exactly did she come here for? Who knows? Chapter 130. Who knows? In short, it was not just because she was bored at home and followed her old man to the Luo family for a stroll. Then the real purpose of Wan Fengfei coming here was worth pondering. Jingwan felt that she most likely came for her. Coming to this conclusion, Jingwan's entire person felt a little unwell. How should it be said, Jingwan had always been puzzled. How could she be inexplicably targeted by a pervert? Originally, she was prepared to consciously avoid her, but she actually still came to find her home. Wan Mimi, I always feel that Wan Fengfei is strange somewhere. I had little contact with her in the past, but it's not like I didn't have any contact with her. I don't seem to have this kind of feeling. Sun Yijia was somewhat puzzled. Jingwan glanced at her. Of course, you weren't targeted by her in the past. Now the reason why perverts were called perverts was because those people's brain circuits were different from ordinary people. However, she roughly knew the reason why Wan Fengfei targeted her sister-in-law. It was nothing more than a certain kind of strange idea similar to Lucier. She couldn't bear to see others doing well. The time Sun Yijia married into the Luo family was originally the time of her marriage with Jin Qinhuang. As Jin Qinhuang's prospective Cifei, Wan Fengfei should have married into Jin Qinhuang Fu not long after. However, this specific time had not been set from the beginning. Jingwan got the news from her grandfather Luo Peishan. It seemed that there was no movement at all. It was as if Lu Qingdi had simply forgotten that he had bestowed such a marriage. It was as if the time of Wan Fengfei's marriage had been deliberately delayed, and there was a bit of an endless delay. Wan Fengfei looked indifferent. Was she anxious in her heart? He was definitely anxious. Without Sun Yijia she was still a prospective Cifei, but she still couldn't marry over. That was the man she had longed for a long time. It was clearly just a step away and she could legitimately get close to him. But in her eyes, it should be a very easy step, but she always felt that it was abnormally difficult. What exactly was the problem? Why was it deliberately delayed? No one would believe such an excuse as not marrying into the family. If he really wanted to, wouldn't it be better for her to marry him as his consort? She was very clear that the problem did not lie with Luqing Emperor, nor would it be with Su Guifei. The marriage was already a foregone conclusion, so the Empress could not possibly disturb it. After thinking about it, the reason could only be Jin Qinhuang himself. Perhaps he was dissatisfied with what he had done in the past? He wouldn't. He wasn't someone who would care about such things. She had unparalleled talent and beauty. She would be the best wife for him. She had always cared about her, hadn't she? In that case there must be some other reason. He just didn't think of it. Wan Fengfei wanted to personally ask Li Hongyuan. However, she never had a chance to see him. She wanted to go directly to Jin Wangfu, but if she really went she could forget about keeping her good reputation. If Li Hongyuan knew what Wan Fengfei was thinking, he would probably ignore her completely. He was now looking for an opportunity to get rid of her. However, Wan Fengfei was very good at using all kinds of methods to ruin people. If the same method was used on her, it wouldn't be so easy. Moreover, there weren't many opportunities recently. And if Jingwan knew, she would probably be very speechless. Jin Qinhuang, this kind of person, had met many talented and beautiful women. You, Wan Fengfei, were better than them only because of your birth. How narcissistic would you be to have this kind of thinking? Whether she blames you or not, it has nothing to do with you. This sister-in-law of hers, in her eyes, should only be incidental. There was her, this eyesore, in front of her. That's right. After her marriage with Jin Qinhuang was annulled, it naturally had nothing to do with Jin Qinhuang's quasi-Cifei. Moreover, she had settled down now, so why should she care about her? That's right. Sun Yijia leaned closer to Jingwan, smiling somewhat maliciously. My fifth gu also came today. Jingwan smiled rather helplessly. Your fifth gu is the same as the other Darren. They are all people who love flowers. Is it strange that he came? Her skin was so thick, what was this bit of teasing considered? Sun Yijia looked at her with a smile. She wanted to pretend that she didn't understand and muddle through? Fine. Wan Mimi, after you marry my fifth gu, how should we address each other? You call me sister-in-law and I also call you sister-in-law? It's still early. Jia Jijia can call me whatever you want. Jia Jijia? Since I married into the Luo family you haven't called me that. Is this a hint? You can think whatever you want. Sun Yijia suddenly reached out to touch her face with a bit of worry and pity. You and my fifth gu to me are both very important. If you two walk together it would naturally be very good. However, to be honest, after becoming a member of the Luo family, I don't approve of you marrying my fifth gu that much, especially after my mother's actions. Wan Mimi, if she really wants to make things difficult for you, you will have a hard time living under her. In the past I took it for granted. Because I was used to it, because there was no comparison, and because my mother also avoided me for some things, I thought that being her daughter-in-law was actually nothing. After marrying into the Luo family for a few days, I don't want to enter the inner courtyard anymore. That place is like what you said, a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. To have you trapped there for a lifetime, I feel uncomfortable just thinking about it. Why did you suddenly mention this out of nowhere? In fact, when you were discussing the marriage with my fifth gu, I wanted you to reject this marriage. However, such a big matter is not something that I can blindly meddle in. Moreover, you have always had your own ideas. You naturally agreed to it for your own reasons. However, there are some things that I feel really uncomfortable keeping in my heart. I don't feel good if I don't say it out loud. Anyway, Wan Mimi, you also have feelings for my fifth gu. If it's possible, you should cancel this marriage. Jingwan looked at her in surprise. This change in attitude was a little too fast. Just now they were still talking about the issue of how to address each other in the future. In the blink of an eye, she was asking her to cancel the marriage? You really think so? Sun Yijiao nodded very firmly. After all, a girl can't compare to a man. Marriage is like a second reincarnation. It's really too important. If a man doesn't like his wife, he will take in a concubine. If he doesn't like one, he will take in another one. As for a girl, if she doesn't like her, she can only sulk. Even if my fifth gu doesn't get what he wants, as time passes, it will slowly fade away. It won't have too much of an impact. However, I also know that there are some things that I can only say verbally. If others find out that I urged you to cancel the marriage, I will definitely be scolded in all kinds of ways. Especially fifth gu. He will definitely hate me for the rest of his life. Jingwan couldn't help laughing. She picked up a small snack the size of a fingertip and stuffed it into Sun Yijiao's mouth. You're the only one who worries about nothing. Sun Yijiao almost choked. She covered her mouth and swallowed the snack with great difficulty. She was rather indignant. Who am I doing this for? Yes. For me. I appreciate your kindness. Don't worry about me. I have to live my life. I'm not a pushover. If I really get bullied, I won't be a punching bag forever. One had to know that her fighting prowess was forced out of her. She might not be good at otaku fighting now, but she had seen countless girls who were as innocent as a piece of white paper. After entering the palace, they could become masters of palace fighting. Even a rabbit would bite if it was forced into a corner. If she was forced into a corner, she would also turn evil. She might have looked down on herself before. She should treat herself better. She should learn from Jin Qinhuang. It would be best to let the people who made her unhappy die of sullenness. In the future, even if her husband was dissolute and unfaithful, she shouldn't obediently give up her position. Being a virtuous wife and loving mother, even if she didn't care, she should find some trouble for him. Just treat it as finding fun for herself. Her days were too dull, it would really be very boring. What a pity. She didn't have Jin Qinhuang's life. In front of many people she couldn't show off her might. In the front courtyard, the others left reluctantly. Luo Peishan had spent a lot of effort to protect those treasures that were covetously eyed by those old men. Mother, next time he wouldn't let this group of bastards come to his door. In this group, the youngest was close to 40, while the oldest was 60 to 70. Sun Yilin really couldn't be any more fresh and tender. After he knew that these people would come to the Luo family, he came on his own. He was the first to come and moved a lot of good things from his own courtyard, saying that it was for Luo Peishan. Now he dawdled and stayed until the end. In fact, Sun Yilin rarely had dealings with the older generation. The elders that he usually saw were all dignified, strict and meticulous. Today, after meeting them, he knew that this was perhaps only one side of these elders. In private, when they met their beloved things, they would even be like children, fighting with each other until their faces and ears turned red. After that group of people had been sent off as if they were sending off a plague god, Luo Peishan's gaze fell on Sun Yilin. His indignant heart gradually calmed down. After looking for a moment, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He thought of Jin Qinhuang, who appeared in front of him last night. After knowing his unknown side, and even more after knowing that his bad reputation was only for the sake of smoothly marrying his own good grandson, he looked at the others. Even if Jin Qinhuang's ability to anger people was still the same from all aspects, not to mention a group of young masters, even the old foxes of their age might not be able to compare to him. The first young master of the capital, Sun Yilin, could only be considered outstanding after excluding that person. Thinking about those things that he had brought before, he really did care about the third girl. Unfortunately, there was Jin Qinhuang, that living king of hell who planned meticulously step by step. No matter what, he couldn't get what he wanted. While he sighed, he couldn't help but feel pity again. However, Luo Peishan couldn't show it too obviously. Some things, if noticed by others, would cause serious consequences. You are considerate. Despite this, Luo Peishan still couldn't put on his initial bad attitude towards Sun Yilin. Sun Yilin still remembered before the engagement, Luo Peishan's attitude when he looked for him. His nose wasn't his nose and his eyes weren't his eyes. Even if he had to bear the hostility of others, he would be righteous. Now he was so amiable, especially during the day when he had such a conflict with Prince Kong. Now he didn't know if he should be flattered or terrified. After Luo Peishan sat down, he also let Sun Yilin sit down. Because he knew that Sun Yilin wouldn't become his own grandson-in-law, Luo Peishan spoke a lot with Sun Yilin out of guilt and also out of love for talent. At least at this moment he genuinely taught Sun Yilin as his own grandson. Because he had already entered the officialdom, he also talked a lot about the ways of being an official. Similarly, Luo Peishan didn't come in third place in the senior high school either. He didn't choose to enter the Hanlin Academy but chose to be sent out. His experience to a certain extent was enough to be called legendary. Listening to him really made one feel as if they had studied for 10 years. His experience as an official were of great help to Sun Yilin. After all, no matter how smart Sun Yilin was, he didn't have broad knowledge and wisdom accumulated over time. Duke Dinghua's thoughts were all on his eldest son. Moreover, even if Duke Dinghua was in the imperial court, what he learned and thought were all about interests. He put Duke Dinghua's mansion and the Sun family in the first place, which was completely different from people like Luo Peishan. What he could teach Sun Yilin happened to be what Sun Yilin hated the most for so many years. Therefore, even if Duke Dinghua wanted to teach him carefully now, he was not interested in learning. Now, Luo Peishan was undoubtedly helping him make up for his shortcomings. In Sun Yilin's view, Luo Peishan was training his future grandson-in-law. Whether it was for this reason or his own shortcomings, he listened very attentively and his attitude could be said to be respectful. When he encountered something he didn't understand, he promptly raised it, and Luo Peishan was also unusually patient to answer his questions. Seeing that it was getting late, Luo Peishan didn't mean to see the guest out, and Sun Yilin also didn't intend to leave. "Why don't you stay at the Luo house tonight? What does Brother Lin think?" Luo Peishan suggested. Sun Yilin was naturally very happy. It would be impolite for this student to refuse. Luo Peishan nodded and sent someone to Duke Dinghua's mansion to report. Sun Yilin might think that this was Luo Peishan's recognition of him, and Luo Peishan didn't know when Prince Jin would break up this marriage. Perhaps it would be tomorrow. Therefore the opportunity was rare. If he had time he would teach him more. After all, once the engagement was dissolved, Sun Yilin would have no reason to come. When Duchess Dinghua Furen heard that her son was going to stay at the Luo house for the night, her expression was somewhat distorted. It must be known that since Sun Yilin was born, unless he went out of the city to play and stay in a village, or to places like White Dragon Temple, as long as he was in the city, even if it was his relatives and friends, he had never stayed at other people's houses. He always said that other people's houses were not comfortable, but now he made an exception. Just because it was the maiden home of the woman he liked. Duchess Dinghua Furen was very clear that if it was another woman that Sun Yilin didn't like, even after marriage, he would not stay at the Yu house. For the third miss of the Luo family, how many times had this first time appeared? Duchess Dinghua Furen thought that she couldn't count it clearly. At the same time, not only did her impression of Jingwan become worse, but even the Luo family was killed by her. In her opinion, the Luo family was shameless. They actually used an unmarried girl to keep her son. Otherwise, according to her son's temperament, how could he stay overnight? What kind of scholarly family was that? It was clearly a brothel. Such a family taught a girl who looked dignified, but who knew how lowly she was in her bones. Now that her son held her in such high regard, when he married her in the future, would he marry her daughter-in-law or her ancestor? If she didn't kill her arrogance, she didn't know if she would do something more shameless. "Come in." A nanny beside Duchess Dinghua Furen came in. "Madam." "Go and reply to that side." "I agree to meet them tomorrow." "Yes, madam." That was why it was said that once a person became paranoid, they would become unreasonable at certain times. Why did she think that her son was a delicious cake that others wanted to get by with unscrupulous means? Duchess Dinghua Furen was not the only one who cared about Sun Yilin staying overnight in the Luo family. Of course, no one's thoughts would be as dirty as Duchess Dinghua Furen's. Some people thought that Prince Kang's people wanted to win over Luo Peishan through Sun Yilin, while Prince Kang's people thought that Luo Peishan was expressing goodwill to the Empress and Prince Kang through Sun Yilin. Was it sincere or not? Prince Rui pushed him to the position of Minister of the Ministry of Personnel. Did he deliberately sow discord, or did they secretly collude with each other? Because Luo Peishan was now in the teeth of the storm, people always paid attention to him. It was not difficult to know what was going on. However, at this time the palace gate had been locked, but the Empress still knew the news at the first time. It was not that she had control of the palace to the extent that ordinary people could not reach, but that she cared about the news outside the palace, which also proved her ambition in another way. She did not believe in her son. She could only feel at ease when everything was under her control. As for Luo Peishan's words, "My nephew likes his aunt in the daytime," the Empress naturally thought of all kinds of possible hidden meanings at the first time. It would be a lie to say that the Empress was completely indifferent, but there was no reason for her to hold on to this matter. If she really did not let it go, people would think that she was guilty. Her son really came from an improper background. Maybe at that time he would be like the yellow mud falling into his pants. Besides, the Empress had always been good at enduring. When she heard this, she could even say, "Her son is getting more and more outrageous." At this moment, the Empress's face was solemn. She sat in her own bedroom. No one could tell whether she was happy or angry. Kidby said that this son was stupid and easy to control, but sometimes too stupid and easy to mess things up. Sitting in this position, she could not brazenly interfere too much. At that time, not to mention that the people who relied on her son would be dissatisfied, Lu Qing would punish her in person. Therefore, even if the Empress had the world in her hands, she still felt powerless. No matter the reason why Sun Yilin stayed in the Luo family, it was a good thing for her. Although the grandfather and grandson did not talk all night, they still went to bed very late. In the morning, Luo Peishan was preparing to go to court. If it was not for the servant who reminded him that the second young lady was getting married today, he would not have known. However, even if he knew, Luo Peishan did not have much of a reaction. In his memory, Luo Jingxiang's face was blurred. He had people randomly pick 2 pieces of calligraphy and paintings and send them over to add to the dowry. The dowry was sent to the groom's house yesterday afternoon. These things added to the dowry naturally went with Luo Jingxiang today. Chapter 131. Although Luo Jingxiang's wedding was not as lively as Luo Jingbu's wedding, there were many things that should be there. Even the groom was surprised when he received the dowry yesterday. It was much more than what they had expected. They sighed that the Luo family was indeed a kind family. Even a concubine's daughter was valued so highly. How could they know that this was all because the Lu matriarch's scheme against Jingwan's mother failed and instead lost money and increased Luo Jingxiang's dowry by 30%? However, because of this extra dowry, the groom knew that the Luo family valued his daughter. In addition, on the eve of Luo Jingxiang's wedding, Luo Peishan was promoted to the Minister of Personnel. Luo Jingxiang's status was greatly elevated. After all, the Ministry of Personnel had the most power among the 6 ministries. It had the power to directly appoint and dismiss officials below the 4th rank. Being associated with such a family was much more advantageous than being in the same situation. Luo Jingxiang also did not expect such a good thing to happen a day or 2 before her wedding. As long as her grandfather was still healthy and firmly in the position of minister, then her future life in her husband's family would be very comfortable. The person who was about to become her husband was still a virgin. As for her father-in-law, he was only a minor 5th rank official. Although there were 2 mothers-in-law above him, they still looked forward to the Luo family. No matter who it was, they would treat her with care. Moreover, based on her understanding of her grandfather, as long as she did not seek death, her grandfather would still be willing to help her. Luo Jingxiang happily got into the bridal sedan chair. As for her birth mother, concubine Hua, because she took the blame for her mother, she could be considered to have something against her. She would be able to live the rest of her life peacefully in a corner of the 3rd branch and would not be tortured. She could be considered to have completely escaped from her mother's evil clutches. She had great expectations for the future. After a busy day, another big matter was settled. If nothing unexpected happened, the Luo family should be relatively peaceful for a period of time. However, Luo Peishan would probably be very busy. Not only at the Ministry of Personnel Yamen, even when he returned home, many people would come to visit him. At least, people from Prince Rui's faction would come frequently. It was said that one would only be calm when there was nothing out of the ordinary. However, with a certain king of hell watching from the side, how could there not be any accidents? Unless there was a certain someone that he had been longing for a long time back to his nest and held in his arms, then he would probably be able to truly calm down. When it was time to pay respects at night, everyone else was sent away except for Luo Jingying and her parents. Luo Rongping and Mrs. Lu still didn't know, so they had some doubts. Only Luo Jingying was very nervous. Luo Rongping was about to ask, but the 2 nannies beside Madame Luo suddenly stepped forward. "4th young lady, please come with us to the inner room." Luo Jingying subconsciously took 2 steps back and tugged at the corner of her mouth. I don't know what the 2 nannies want? She couldn't help but look at Madame Luo. There was no warmth in the eyes of Madame Luo, who was sitting quietly. Luo Jingying's heart pounded uncontrollably. Why are you being so long-winded with her? Madame Luo said coldly. Since Madame Luo had said so, who would be polite to her? The 2 nannies each grabbed one of her arms and dragged her to the inner room. What are you doing? Let go of me. Luo Jingying struggled, but it was in vain. Father, mother. Luo Rongping and Mrs. Lu didn't know what was going on at all. They wanted to say something, but when they met Madame Luo's knife-like eyes, they swallowed back their words. No matter how scheming Mrs. Lu was, no matter how good she usually was at pretending, she had a deep-rooted fear of Madame Luo. This fear was not only between a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law. Madame Luo had never been bad to her daughter-in-law. It was only because Madame Luo absolutely suppressed her in some aspects. Regardless of her bearing and self-restraint, there were times when she seemed to see through her at a glance. In front of her, it was as if she had been stripped naked and had nowhere to hide. As for Luo Rongping, his mother lived a peaceful life, but she was too pretentious. As a result, he didn't know where she was taken away by Luo Peishan. When he was a few years old, he was raised by Madame Luo. Because he wasn't too young at that time and his mother talked nonsense in his ear all day long, he hated Madame Luo in his heart. Who was Madame Luo? If you hated her, how could you expect her to treat you well? She would give you enough to eat and warm clothes, and when you reached the age, she would hire a teacher for you. Luo Rongping was raised like this, and inexplicably he also developed a fear of Madame Luo. In front of Madame Luo, he was even more obedient than in front of his father. Not long after Luo Jingying was taken away, he was brought back again. Luo Jingying, who was brought back, looked as if he had been tortured. His hair was messy, his clothes were scattered, and his whole body seemed to have been drained of energy. He directly knelt on the floor. Madame Luo was very displeased to see him like this. How is it? Madame Luo, 4th young lady, has lost her virginity, and there are marks on her body. This sentence was like a bolt from the blue for Mrs. Lu, and Luo Rongping was also shocked. Tell me, who is that man? Madame Luo was not angry but only indifferent. Luo Jingying sat on the ground in a daze and didn't say anything. Madame Luo didn't care. Come on, go to Luo Jingying's room and see if there is anything special. Also tie up all the servants in her yard. Bring the nanny and the head maid here. Don't go, don't go. Luo Jingying suddenly wanted to stop his mother, who was leaving like crazy. No one would believe that there was no ghost in her room with her reaction. At this time, Mrs. Lu only wanted to strangle her. Because of the incident in Great Princess Royal's residence last time, she was already very disappointed with her and planned to give her the cold shoulder. As a result, when she didn't pay attention, this evil creature actually, Mrs. Lu's vision turned black and she almost fainted. Luo Rongping directly stepped forward and kicked Luo Jingying. His plan. His dream of being the father-in-law of the country. How could a piece of trash enter Jin Qingwang Fu? That kick was full of anger and he used all his strength. Luo Jingying let out a sharp cry of pain. Now that Darren is showing off, why didn't you do it earlier? Madame Luo coldly reprimanded. Luo Rongping stiffly retracted his foot and retreated. However, when he looked at Mrs. Lu again, his eyes were as if they were dipped in poison. In his view, his daughter's virtue was all because she, as a mother, didn't teach her well. Look at how good his eldest son was, and his eldest daughter wasn't bad either. Only this daughter made him lose face. However, he neglected the fact that other than the teacher, the one who taught Luo Jingming more was Luo Peishan and not him, his father. Luo Jingqiang was also raised by his concubine mother. In his eyes, that concubine's daughter had always been petty and unpresentable. It was only recently that she had changed. Just because of this, he had the nerve to stick gold on his face. Mrs. Lu didn't notice his gaze at all. After a moment of dizziness, she suddenly pounced forward and firmly grabbed Luo Jingying's arm. Who is that man? Say it quickly, say it. Who is that wild man? While questioning, she grabbed her arm and fiercely pulled. Luo Jingying was like a broken doll swaying with her strength. Mother, let go, it hurts. After being kicked by Luo Rongping just now, Luo Jingying was still in so much pain that she could only suck in cold air. Her tears fell down one after another. Now that she was being ravaged by her own mother, she was in such a sorry state. Say it quickly, say it. Who is it? Mrs. Lu's voice became sharper and sharper. Her other hand even directly pinched Luo Jingying's face. Who are you doing this for? Get lost. Mrs. Lu froze and somewhat trembled as she withdrew her hand. Her heart fell to the bottom. This time it really wouldn't be so easy to resolve. Luo Jingying refused to say, but old Madame Luo wasn't in a hurry. He just waited. Luo Jingying wasn't a stubborn person. Soon Luo Jingying's etiquette instructor and 4 servant girls were brought over. The others were tied up and locked in the small room. One of the servants directly put a bag of things in front of old Madame Luo. Old Madame Luo's eyes fell directly on the Luo Jingying's etiquette instructor. She looked at her for a while, then her eyes fell on Mrs. Lu. You found a good instructor. She even thought of a way to help this girl escape from the residence. Mrs. Lu clenched her teeth and trembled. She didn't dare to say a word. Although the etiquette instructor had already thought that she might be discovered, when it came to the end she couldn't help but panic. The servant at the back door is going to be sold as a guilty slave. You can go and accompany her. The etiquette instructor was really scared this time. She probably didn't expect old Madame Luo to be so ruthless. She suddenly raised her head. Old Madame, you can't do this. Can't? Old Madame Luo looked at her indifferently. You're just a guilty slave. Why can't I do it? What, you're a non-slave instructor that Mrs. Lu invited back for worship. Even if that's the case, immediately get out of the Luo family. I'd like to see which family will invite you back after you leave the Luo family. An etiquette instructor who had been driven out of the house and she didn't look young, would be invited back by everyone. Generally speaking, if a respectable family encountered such a person, they would quietly send her away without leaving any face. It could be seen that she had really angered the master. If such a person was invited back, it would be to teach their own girl a bad lesson. Old Madam is so heartless. Aren't you afraid that this old servant will reveal forth Mrs. Matter? It's said that like master like servant. These two really know how to threaten people, and they're all using the Luo family's reputation to make an example. Good, it's really good. Old Madame Luo nodded. Mrs. Lu couldn't help but tremble. Old Madame Luo's words were clearly referring to her. Because of concubine Huan's matter, she had threatened old Madame Luo. Now every time old Madame Luo mentioned it, she regretted and worried. Old Madame Luo used her hand to open the bag on the table. When she saw the things inside, especially a phoenix tail hairpin, her eyes were exceptionally cold. With a wave of her hand, she swept everything to the ground. Ah! Luo Jingying screamed and pounced forward. He hurriedly gathered those things together. When he saw the broken bracelet and the scattered beads, his heart ached even more than when he was kicked by his father just now. He raised his head to look at old Madame Luo. He couldn't hide his hatred, as if he wanted to pounce on old Madame Luo and bite her to death. Chapter 132. Madame Luo was so angry that she laughed. I didn't expect the Luo family to have someone like you. I thought that you were young and naive, so you were deceived. But now it seems that you're willing to do it. Since you don't want to talk about it, then forget it. Go back and pack up. Tomorrow you'll go to Qian Manor. In fact, Luo Jingying didn't need to be mentioned. Madame Luo had a rough idea of what was going on. After all, she was a girl from the minister's manor. Ordinary men wouldn't dare to touch her, and there were only a few who dared to use such despicable means. With the addition of the phoenix tail hairpin, the result was out. Moreover, she deliberately gave Luo Jingying such an obvious hint as the phoenix tail hairpin. This was already a clear indication of her attitude. It would be a lie if Madame Luo didn't hate her. Only this idiot would go up to her. From Luo Jingying's point of view, even if something happened, Madame Luo would probably close the small temple again. Otherwise, she would at most be sent to the country house. Even so, she believed that she would enter Prince Rue's manor sooner or later. She just needed to endure until Prince Rue came to pick her up. But once she left the capital, no matter how stupid or naive she was, she knew that the man she liked, her life of glory and wealth, and her thoughts of stepping on everyone else would all turn into bubbles. No, I don't want to leave the capital, I don't. Madame Luo was unmoved by Luo Jingying's crazy behavior. That's fine too. Luo Jingying's expression eased a little, and she looked at Madame Luo with hope. You can directly remove the clan and then you can do whatever you want. Luo Jingying widened her eyes in disbelief, and her pupils constricted. When a girl was removed from the clan, even her surname would be erased, and she would become a rootless duckweed without any support. From a certain point of view, she was even worse than those lowly girls because anyone could step on her, bully her, and die on the streets for nothing. From this point, it could also be seen that in Li Hongyuan's previous life, in order to not implicate the Luo family, Jingwan had to sever ties with the Luo family. What kind of determination and courage did she need? If she was not careful, she would have been consigned to eternal damnation. Luo Jingying was still unmarried. There was no place for her to stay apart from the Luo family. Even if she believed that she was the true love of Prince Rue and was abandoned by the Luo family, there was still Prince Rue. Did she have the courage to accept such a fate? Absolutely not. Without the support of her family, even if she entered Prince Rue's mansion, she would only be at the bottom. Was Luo Jingying really so stupid that she didn't realize anything? Was she really so stupid that she thought that Prince Rue would pamper her, protect her, and treat her like a treasure in his palm? She knew very well that she was not that important. He just did not want to admit it. Of course, you still have a third choice, and that is to die suddenly. Madame Luo played it down more and more. Luo Jingying's lips wriggled, but she couldn't say a word. The craziness from a moment ago was now replaced by panic and fear. Even when she had been locked up for so long last time, she had never experienced the fear brought about by Madame Luo as deeply as she did now. Her whole body was trembling and she didn't know how to react. Madame Lu was also so frightened that her soul almost left her body. She quickly knelt down and said, "Mother, Jinger is young and ignorant." She was just confused for a moment and was blinded by those vulgar things. She was deceived by flowery words. "I beg you, forgive her this time. When I go back, I will teach her well. I will never let her make another mistake. Mother, please forgive her this time, please forgive her this time." Madame Lu kowtowed and blood soon oozed out of her forehead. Luo Jingying seemed to have also reacted. She knelt properly and began to kowtow and beg for mercy in a tearful voice. Madame Luo looked at her indifferently, then glanced at Luo Rongping, who was standing behind the mother and daughter with an uncertain expression. It was true that their family was like a nest of snakes and rats. Madame Luo was about to speak again when Luo Peishan came from the study. Seeing the situation in the room, he didn't seem surprised at all and sat down next to Madame Luo. "Madame, don't be angry with these evil creatures." Madame Luo glanced at Luo Peishan. To say that Luo Rongping became like this today, Luo Peishan also had a lot to do with it. She, who was not his biological mother, didn't care, and Luo Peishan, who was his biological father, didn't care much. Of course, he was very busy in those years. Not to mention this son of a concubine, he didn't even have much time to care about the other 3 sons. Even so, now that Madame Luo had to clean up the mess, she was still a little unhappy with Luo Peishan. However, after so many years, she couldn't argue with him at this time. It was meaningless. "Does Master know?" Luo Peishan nodded. Not only was he aware of it, but he also knew everything, including his 3rd son. He had once wanted to seek refuge with Prince Rue, but he had no way of doing so. Coincidentally, he had gotten close to Prince Kang's people. In the end, after a lot of hard work, he was still wandering around the periphery. Not long ago, he had followed a lantern to Prince Rue. Before he could come to a conclusion, his own family had been forced to stand with Prince Kang's faction. Well, it had actually given him a push, causing Prince Rue to not let go of him. After weighing the pros and cons, he had completely turned his back on the Luo family. Luo Peishan was now doubly angry. This bastard son and granddaughter were one thing, and the other was the person who sent him the news. Other than that living hell, there was no other choice. His family's affairs were clearly known by an outsider who coveted his beloved granddaughter. How could he not be angry? What was more infuriating was that that person said that he, as the head of the family, didn't need to deal with it. It was too easy to deal with it like this. Take them back and put them under house arrest. If there's any more trouble, Madame Lu, you can take the letter of divorce back to your maternal home. Then he looked at Luo Rongping. You don't need to be an official anymore. Just go back to Chidan Prefecture. Otherwise, it's fine to separate your branch now. I don't need you to support me. From now on, don't take a step into this house. His parents were still alive, but he was already separated. Moreover, not all of his brothers would be separated. Just his branch. What was the difference between that and being kicked out of the house? The Luo family's style was there. It was certainly the fault of this son. He would definitely be stripped of his position as an official. Moreover, without the Luo family, or more accurately without Luo Peishan, what value did he have? Not to mention climbing up to Prince Rue, he might even be crushed to death by him. Luo Rongping didn't dare to say a word. He grabbed one in each hand, probably using all the strength he had in his life, and took his wife and children away. Madame Luo didn't ask anything else. Send all 5 of them to the manor. The auntie doesn't look young anymore. The 4 of you should do your best to serve her well. If there's any mistake, be careful of your skin. Luo Jingying's auntie directly collapsed into a ball. It's all over. The 4 servants cowered in response, not daring to say a word. However, in their hearts they hated Luo Jingying and this auntie. Luo Jingying and the others couldn't do anything to her, but this old witch was usually on top of their heads, scolding them at the slightest provocation. This time Madame Luo had ordered them to serve her well. If they didn't serve her well, it would be difficult to vent the anger in their hearts. After they were taken out, the servants were also dismissed. Only the old couple was left in the room, along with the precious jewelry scattered all over the floor. Madame Luo looked at Luo Peishan in confusion. What do you mean, master? Luo Peishan sighed helplessly. Someone doesn't want them to have a good time. Madame Luo's expression became even more confused. What did he mean? Who was this someone? Such a big matter wasn't dealt with strictly but dealt with lightly. Was this not letting them have a good time? This person only when they think that they got what they wanted, that they stood at the top and then shattered their hopes and fell into the dust, will they know pain. Only when they are hopelessly struggling on the verge of death, living a life worse than death, will they be able to vent their anger. Madame Luo's heart jumped. Who had such a big enmity with the Luo family's 3rd branch that they had to go to this extent? Even if it was her, no matter how angry she was, at most she would just send the person far away. Luo Peishan glanced at Madame Luo and sighed helplessly. Madame Luo had never seen Luo Peishan like this. In the past, no matter how big the storm was, he could face it calmly. Master, it's better to tell this concubine directly. She was very curious about the person behind the scenes. Jin Qin Wang. Luo Peishan originally didn't want to tell Madame Luo, but 3rd girl's marriage would be ruined sooner or later. After thinking about it, it was better to tell her everything and let her be mentally prepared, so that she wouldn't be anxious and angry when the time comes. Jin Qin Wang? It had to be said that Madame Luo was very surprised. She didn't think of him at all. He was simply an impossible candidate. However, Lao San offended him. According to Jin Qin Wang's nature as the living king of hell, he would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. If he really offended him, he might really do something that made one's life worse than death. However, thinking about it again, such a roundabout way didn't seem like Jin Qin Wang's style. Not really, but it's more serious than offending him directly. Lao Sen's family made the person at the top of his heart unhappy. Madame Luo raised an eyebrow. Master, say it all at once. Luo Peishan leaned closer and lowered his voice. The one at the top of Jin Qin Wang's heart, our family's 3rd girl. Don't be agitated, listen to what I have to say. Then he narrated the matter regarding Jin Qin Wang as well as the things he did to Jingwen. The matter is like this. Madame Luo's face was full of shock. Master, let me calm down first. This news was really too shocking. However, this time, Madame Luo's endurance was unexpectedly strong. She only took 2 deep breaths and didn't get sick. She sat quietly for about the time it took to drink a cup of tea. Master, is what you said true? Jin Qin Wang said it himself. That person probably disdains to lie. Madame Luo was silent again. He did this for Wan Wan. It's not impossible to marry Wan Wan to him. You actually agreed so easily? Luo Peishan found it strange. No matter who Wan Wan marries, the future is uncertain. However, for now, Jin Qin Wang can protect Wan Wan thoroughly. This is something that no one else can do. Just this point alone, he is stronger than anyone else. This reason was so strong that Luo Peishan couldn't refute it. Chapter 133. The husband and wife were silent for a moment. Then old Madame Luo spoke again. Jin Qin Wang means to send Luo Jingying to Prince Rui's Fu? What about Luo Rongping? How will he deal with it? When Luo Peishan heard the way his old wife addressed him, he knew that she was thoroughly disgusted with the 3rd branch this time. Luo Peishan also didn't want to redeem anything. That son of his refused to listen to his advice and stubbornly clung to his own course. He even thought that he, as a father, didn't like him and wanted to cut off his future. Rui Qinwang wants to detain the 3rd branch as a chess piece to control our Luo family. He has already coaxed Luo Jingying to be dead set on him, and has completely coerced and enticed Lao San to lean towards him. Since that's the case, what harm is there in fulfilling their wishes? Only, I don't know what kind of expression they will have when it's all for naught in the end. Old Madame Luo coldly snorted, "Can't you blame the heavens and accuse others and push all the blame onto others? Could it be that you still expect them to reflect on themselves?" What kind of thoughts these people had, she was all too clear. Luo Peishan admitted that his old wife was right. How is Lei Oi doing in the Ministry of Personnel? The main officials of the Ministry of Personnel all have something on them that Jin Qinhuang has in his hands. Today he gave it all to me. Old Madame Luo moved. These things that could be used against them wouldn't be a small matter. Once it was revealed, there was a high chance that they wouldn't be able to keep their position and might even lose their heads. However, the Ministry of Personnel should also have Jin Qinhuang's people. Are you not planning on letting them know your position? Letting you threaten and torment them? However, this is also good. For you it's the safest. Jin Qinhuang is very meticulous in his work. From what I see, even those who work for him don't know each other's details, not to mention the small officials below. I'm afraid that they don't even know who they are working for. Old Madame Luo sighed. Everyone in the world knows that Jin Qinhuang has nothing but a body of skin, and his reputation is so bad that no one can compare to it. Who would have thought that he hid it so deeply, grasped so many things, and completely contrary to the rumors, kept himself clean and honest. Towards Wanwan he is even more. A man like him, even if he gets what he wants, his thoughts will fade, but towards Wanwan he shouldn't be too bad. Putting aside his identity, there's no one more suitable for Wanwan than him in other aspects. But Jingmin and Sun Yilin. Madame Luo immediately waved her hand to interrupt him. Two grown men, it's just breaking off an engagement. It's not like you'll lose a piece of flesh. Luo Peishan looked at his old wife speechlessly. The point is that both of them are deeply in love with the third girl. So what? Would Wanwan marry anyone who liked Wanwan? If it's possible, I don't mind Wanwan marrying them all back. Madame Luo threatened valiantly. Luo Peishan looked at Madame Luo in disbelief. You, what? Luo Peishan felt that at this moment she didn't give in at all. Forget it, I won't argue with you about this. I just feel that Jin Qinhuang is scheming against them and is completely kept in the dark. It's a little pitiful. Pitiful? For someone like Jin Qinhuang, for other men to peep at the person in his heart, hey, he didn't give Qin Jingmin a princess and cut off his future. It's already very benevolent. Luo Peishan looked at her as if he was looking at a monster. Then he thought carefully. His mother, what his old wife said seemed to be right. Even if it was an ordinary man, if someone else peeped at his wife, they would probably fly into a rage and hate that they couldn't get rid of them quickly. And for someone like Jin Qinhuang, it looked like he was outstanding in all kinds of ways and he had the ability to completely eradicate those people one by one. Looking at it this way, he was indeed very benevolent. With such a comparison, Luo Peishan didn't feel that they were pitiful. He only felt that they were really lucky. Not to mention that they still had their lives, their future was also not damaged. This point didn't seem to be certain. When Jin Qinhuang took power in the future, he didn't know if he would still feel that they were an eyesore and make things difficult for them. Luo Peishan smiled embarrassedly. Fern Jingmin is your grandnephew. Wanwan is my grandson. He has taken care of me in every possible way for many years. Luo Peishan, Luo Darren chose to keep quiet. He already understood that as long as it was related to the third girl in front of his old wife, he had to stand aside. What did other people count for? Occasionally when he thought of this he felt bitter. Knowing the details from Luo Peishan, Madame Luo's heart inexplicably settled down completely. Thinking carefully from the beginning, she was uneasy about Jingwan's marriage. She always felt that it wouldn't go smoothly. It turned out that there really was a reason for it. Now she didn't need to think about anything. Let nature take its course. The husband and wife talked about other things, but it was warm and tranquil. However, on the side of the third branch it wasn't so tranquil. Without saying anything, Lu Shi directly used the feather duster to give Luo Jingying a good beating. At first Luo Jingying still wanted to run. Kneel properly for me. If you dare to hide or run, I will immediately go find old Furin and have you, this evil creature, eliminated from the clan. This threat was very effective. Luo Jingying was beaten until she screamed, but she didn't dare to get up. She kept begging for mercy, but unfortunately, it didn't have any effect. She also didn't beg for mercy. She shrunk her body and gritted her teeth to endure. Luo Rongping just watched indifferently from the side, not saying a word. Until Lucia was tired of beating, she casually threw the feather duster away. Now tell me everything clearly. Now Luo Jingying didn't dare to hide anything. Luo Rongping originally thought that she had hooked up with someone else. He didn't expect that it was Prince Rue. His originally gloomy face suddenly brightened up. Since father only grounded her, then it must be Prince Rue who sent him a message. Now the matter has been settled. You should teach her how to serve Prince Rue in the future. Also, her injuries should be healed quickly. If Prince Rue comes to pick her up one day, what will happen to her body with injuries? In any case, she's a girl. You were too cruel just now. Then he flicked his sleeves and left. Lucia didn't have any expression. He was probably numb to it. I saw it. This is your father. Selfish, hypocritical and heartless. In his eyes, you are just a chess piece to seek glory, splendor and wealth. When you're useful, you can barely be regarded as a treasure. When you're useless, you're even worse than a blade of grass. Luo Jingying endured the pain and lowered her head in silence. If you like Prince Rue, mother won't object. Even if you get close to him, it's fine. But you're so stupid to give your body to him at this time. Originally you had some value, but now heh. Lucia sneered. Don't you know how many people want to cling on to our family after your grandfather was promoted to the Minister of Personnel, including those princes? You girls of the right age, the marriage of a girl is the best bargaining chip. If you keep him hanging, he may welcome you as a concubine in the end. But now you can only wait to be carried in a small broken sedan chair. Moreover, if Princess Rue doesn't let go of the matter of you losing your virginity before marriage, then you can forget about turning over a new leaf in this lifetime. Mother, that won't happen. Prince Rue likes me. How can he let his princess control me? Luo Jingying said while shaking her head. She looked really pitiful. Likes you? Even if he likes you, it's because of your grandfather. Even if he really likes you, if a man can like one woman, he can like 2, 3, 4 and countless women. It's common for him to like the new and dislike the old. Who do you think you are? Why can you be the one and only one? Why can't they get along well because of you? If he knows that you have no place in your grandfather's heart, I'm afraid you'll give your body to him in vain. No, he won't do that to me. Luo Jingying cried miserably, but Lucia looked at her as if she was watching a clown. Do you know what a man will do if he really likes a woman? One thing is certain, at least he won't let that woman's reputation be damaged. Unless it's a prostitute, he won't be impatient to take her body. You're a good girl and a girl from an official's family. He's doing this to tie you down completely. He has no other choice but to prevent your grandfather from not agreeing to marry you to him. If your grandfather is cruel, you'll either be a Buddhist monk for the rest of your life, or you'll have to marry into a poor family and work hard for the rest of your life. It can't be, it can't be. Luo Jingying repeated these 3 words over and over again, but she looked like she was about to collapse. It was obvious that she actually believed the Lu matriarch's words. No matter how hard she tried to talk, she couldn't hide the fear in her heart. Whether it will happen or not, just wait and see. Luo Jingying suffered again and again, but she never learned her lesson. She didn't know how to be smart, but she always thought she was smart. She never knew how to talk to her mother first. Now Lucia's heart was cold. She was too lazy to pay attention to her anymore. She had completely lost hope in her. Lucia rearranged some people to her courtyard. She didn't give any less than what she deserved. She only had one rule. If she stepped out of the courtyard without permission, whoever let her out would be beaten to death immediately. The next day when she paid her respects, she didn't see Luo Jingying again. Lucia's face was wooden. He said that she was sick. Jingwan felt that Luo Jingying probably did something wrong again. However, Jingwan always felt that the way her grandmother looked at her was a bit strange. It made her feel strange. Grandmother, what's the matter? Old Madame Luo chuckled twice. Grandmother thinks our Wanwan is really a good girl. Even someone like Jin Qinwang could think about her. It showed that this girl was really outstanding. Jingwan became more and more inexplicable, but old Madame Luo refused to say anything more. Wangshi, who usually came first, was the last to arrive today. However, little Wangshi also came. This was also the first time Jingwan saw her after the last makeup incident. Her complexion looked good, her spirit was still good, and there was a faint smile in her eyes. Seemed that she was really getting better. Old Madame Luo looked at her carefully. So, it's really the makeup powder's doing? I think it's not far from the truth. It's only been 10 days but she's getting better. She herself also feels a lot more relaxed. Wangshi looked at Jingwan gratefully. It's all thanks to third girl. Otherwise, I don't know what the final result would be. Eldest aunt's words are too serious. I just touched my lips, I didn't do anything. Jingwan was actually not so optimistic. If it was really lead poisoning, the child would be affected for a long time. She didn't know if it would affect the child's development. But you just touched your lips and it's more effective than anything else. Little Wangshi touched her belly with a smile. Good child, you have to be filial to your third aunt in the future. Jingwan laughed. Since eldest sister-in-law said so, then I'll wait. She naturally also hoped that the child would be born safely and healthily. Except for those who didn't have any thoughts, everyone else was talking and laughing with Lele. Jingwan went back and continued to draw. She was preparing to teach the third 50th volume of fine brushwork. Luo Jingbo was also busy with this matter when he had time. His speed and drawing skills had improved so Jingwan could relax a little. Miss Rouge Pavilion sent something. Oh, Jingwan was surprised. She didn't expect Yun Yang to act so quickly. Quick, let me have a look. In addition to the loose box, there were 3 sets of hardcover. Jingwan looked at the hardcover box and was speechless for a long time. How much was Yun Yang going to sell this set? The jade box was carved out of a whole piece of jade. It was full of water, crystal clear and exquisite in shape. In addition to the beautiful external decoration, the pure box was also inlaid with large and small gems. The wooden box was made of the best red sandalwood, and the external decoration was also exquisitely carved. Just these 3 boxes could be said to be priceless. So good. How many sets can be sold? Gong Mama laughed. Miss, don't worry. This was originally prepared for a very small number of people. I think Rouge Pavilion didn't prepare much. After doing business for so many years, it's impossible that they don't even know this. Mama, you're right. I just need to sit and distribute the money. Jingwan opened a loose box of lipstick, unscrewed the lid, smeared a little on the back of her hand and smelled it. It's not bad. There are a lot of loose ones. Send some to each branch. The sandalwood set is for grandmother, the jade set is for my mother, and the gold set is for third sister-in-law. In the family except for Luo Jingying, everyone has a quota. For those who are married, regardless of whether they are aunts or sisters, they will be counted according to the number of people. I will give cousin Xiao Xiao a separate set. Of course, even in the Luo family there was no concubine's share. Gong Mama nodded. This was the best. The situation of the married families was different. There would be gossip whether they gave more or less. Therefore it was up to them how to deal with it. As for the 3 exquisite sets, Miss did not keep any of them. Gong Mama did not have any objection. Jingwan's gifts were generally good. Today's gifts were naturally very popular. Especially when they saw the 3 exquisite sets, third Miss was really generous. She gave such things away without batting an eyelid. It would be a lie to say that they were not envious. However, it was a pity that these things belonged to Jingwan. It was her freedom to give them to whoever she wanted. No one could say anything. Luo Jingying and Little Wang did not. However, no one said anything about Jingwan's opinion of Little Wang. Everyone saw that Little Wang was getting better. It was all thanks to third Mississippi. Those who secretly gossiped secretly slapped their own faces. However, the ridicule towards Luo Jingying went up a notch. Luo Jingying had brought it all on herself. The next day Luo Jingqiang came back. She looked good. It was obvious that this second reincarnation might be a rebirth for her. Madame Lu said a few words to her and did not say anything more. Go and see your concubine. Then come back and talk to your sisters. Madame Luo said. Yes. Luo Jingqiang was happy. Madame Luo's move was undoubtedly a slap to Madame Lu's face. Concubine Hua was still in confinement. When Luo Jingqiang got married, she was not able to come out. Madame Luo was undoubtedly doing her a favor. However, Madame Lu's expression only changed. She did not say anything. Her position was getting more and more precarious. If she dared to challenge Madame Luo's authority, she would be courting death. The new son-in-law of the Luo family was dragged away by several brothers-in-law to have a talk. But before Luo Jingqiang came back from her concubine's place, a servant hurriedly came to report. Madame Luo, there is a girl outside. She is directly kneeling in front of the gate. We can't invite her in, but she refuses to leave. She said that she wants third miss to give her a way out. Madame Luo's heart skipped a beat. She subconsciously said 2 words, here it comes. Everyone looked at each other and then looked at Jingwan. What was going on? Jingwan was also confused. When did she get involved with people's lives? Let's go and see. Madame Luo stood up. Jingwan also stood up. Grandmother, I'll go too. Madame Luo frowned slightly. She had already guessed what it was about. Naturally, she did not want Jingwan to get involved. But she also knew Jingwan's temper. How could she persuade her? He could not tell the truth. Then let's go. It must be said that the place where the Luo residence was located was not a restricted area of the prince's residence. Although there were no peddlers hawking their wares, there were still quite a number of people walking around. Naturally, there would be quite a number of people gathering around the kneeling woman. There was a lot of discussion and pointing fingers. Luo Peishan had only been promoted to Minister of Personnel for a few days, and such a thing happened. Could it be that one of the Luo family's men got into trouble? If it was Luo Shangshu, then there would be a lot of fun to watch. Besides Jingwan, there were other people who followed Madame Luo out. Madame Luo did not stop them. It seemed that as soon as the girl saw Jingwan, she directly knelt in front of Jingwan and began to kowtow. Jingwan's eyebrows twitched. Was she trying to shorten her lifespan? Old Madame Luo was even more furious. Pull her up. 2 servant girls hurried forward, each holding one arm, trying to pull her up by force. I'm pregnant, don't touch me. The girl reached out and pushed them away. This time the servant girls did not dare to touch her and the scene suddenly froze. The girl knelt on the ground but did not continue to kowtow. She looked straight at Jingwan. Third Miss Luo, I promise not to fight or snatch. In the future I will serve you well. I only ask that you be merciful, take pity on the child in my belly and let it live. Beg you. Enough. Jingwan's face was cold. Sun Yilan's? The others were still confused, but when they heard Jingwan's words, they immediately understood everything. They looked at each other. The girl lowered her eyes. Yes. https://www.yanguiwo.com/11/11807/6653067 www.yanguiwo.com. Chapter 134. Because she didn't raise her head, she could only see the tears falling down. He looked so wronged. Sometimes Jingwan wondered if she was too easygoing. That was why people always wanted to step on her. Come, prepare a carriage and send this girl to Duke Dingwa's mansion. No, third Miss Luo, Master Lin doesn't like me. If I go to Duke Dingwa's mansion, he will definitely make me abort the baby. I've been in love with him since I was 12 years old, but I know I'm not qualified to be his wife. I want to forget him, but I can't. Because of fate, I had a short-lived marriage. Thought it was enough. I was willing to die immediately. I was ready to leave the capital and live a life of Buddha. But, the woman covered her belly and said carefully, I know it's all my fault, but the baby is innocent. Can you keep it? I'm willing to serve you like an ox or a horse. If you can't tolerate me, I can leave after giving birth to the baby. I promise I won't appear again. Otherwise, I'll leave the baby and leave the mother. What does this have to do with me? Jingwan said lightly. The woman was stunned. You are his fiancée, his future wife. If you are willing to keep the baby, then I believe he will also. Jingwan suddenly smiled. What makes you think I will, Wan? Madame Luo stopped her. She had already expected what Jingwan would say next. If she really said it, it would be bad for her reputation. Although Madame Luo didn't worry about her marriage at all, it was still very annoying to be gossiped about by outsiders. She pulled Jingwan back and took a step forward, just blocking half of Jingwan's body. Jingwan also knew Madame Luo's intention, so she obediently stepped back. Look at you. You don't want to enter the Luo family and you don't want to leave without achieving your goal. Fine, you don't want your face. It doesn't matter if our Luo family loses some face. The woman bit her lip, humiliation flashing in her eyes. Madame Luo was unmoved. Since you can recognize our third daughter at a glance, I think you must have more than met her before. You must have some understanding of her. I think you're not a commoner girl. Tell me, which family are you from? You don't dare to look for the Ding General Manor, but you look for our Luo family. Do you think that our Luo family is easy to bully? There was just a shameless person who ruined the family's reputation. and now there was another one who came to embarrass Wanwan. Madame Luo was burning with anger at this moment. I'd like to see which family taught such a good girl like you. Old madam, I know you're very angry, but I had no choice. I had no choice but to resort to this. Which family are you from? Madame Luo raised her voice, her eyes cold. My father, Right Commander-in-Chief Shen Shahan. Right Commander-in-Chief Shen Shahan was the cousin of noble consort Su's uncle. He was noble consort Su's hardcore supporter. Thinking about it, this was a concubine's daughter and the kind that wasn't very well liked. After all, even if the Shen family and the Ding general manor were enemies and the younger generation didn't interact much, Sun Yijia wouldn't be so ignorant of the Shen family's legitimate daughter. Right Commander-in-Chief? Good, very good. Men, go to the Right Commander-in-Chief's manor and the Ding general manor and invite the two madams to the manor for a chat. Madame Luo made a prompt decision. This was no longer a matter of one or two people, but involved the three major families. To put it more bluntly, it could be involved in all kinds of conspiracies and schemes in the imperial court. Perhaps it was just for Wanwan, but to raise the Luo family's reputation, it was to minimize the impact on Wanwan as much as possible. It must be known that cutting a person's face and cutting a family's face were two different things. If it wasn't handled well, they might become enemies. Madame Luo didn't know what role Jin Qinhuang played in this. Was he the one who planned it from the beginning to the end, or was it just like Min Gear's matter where he was the one who pushed it? However, thinking about it, the latter was more likely. After all, if it was completely planned, it would be easy to see that it was man-made. Then it wouldn't achieve the desired effect. Moreover, according to his care for Wanwan, even if it was to disrupt the marriage, he wouldn't have disgraced Wanwan like this. Madame Luo coldly glanced at this Miss Shen, then turned around. Her expression eased a little and she reached out to take Jingwan's hand. Let's go back with grandmother. Jingwan followed her hand and hooked her arm around hers. Madame Luo patted her hand. Jingwan gently smiled. To be slapped in the face like this, it was certain that she would be angry, but she wasn't sad. In fact, Jingwan's first reaction was probably as sister-in-law wished. The engagement would be broken off. Things had already turned out like this. It would be strange if the engagement could still be maintained. Thinking about it, if she dared to come directly to the Luo family, she must have something to rely on. This reliance definitely wasn't the Shen family. She was afraid that at this time the Shen family still didn't know. After all, the Shen family still wanted to win over the Luo family. To dare to come here and slap in the face like this and offend the Luo family, unless her brain was muddled, then her escape route could only be from the Duke Dingwafu. Who and the Duke Dingwafu didn't find her pleasing to the eye. Again and again, did they really think that she couldn't marry and that it had to be her son? Besides, Jingwan really didn't have any interest in being a mother after marrying into the family. Thus there was nothing to say. Since Madame Luo said to go back, the other members of the Luo family naturally didn't dare to stay any longer. They all went back and then with a bang the door was closed tightly. Only Miss Shen was left kneeling alone in the same place, as well as the people who were watching the show from afar. This kind of result was somewhat unexpected. In order to achieve her goal, Miss Shen could be said to be unscrupulous. It should be known that an unmarried pregnancy was fatal for a woman. However, since she dared to do so, she naturally had her own confidence. Because of their different standpoints, the Shen family and the Duke Dingwafu could be said to be like fire and water. It was impossible for the two families to be close, let alone be married. However, in this case she was pregnant with Sun Yilin's child. This child was her bargaining chip and also an excuse for the Shen family to find trouble with the Duke Dingwafu. In this way, even if she implicated the reputation of the other girls in the Shen family, in order to clear the Shen family's reputation, she would not be punished by her family. Her family would even spare no effort to send her to the Duke Dingwafu. This was enough. After entering the Duke Dingwafu, she didn't have to worry about the child, because the Duchess of Ding had promised her that the child would be born safely. She would become the concubine of the man she liked, and the child would not be criticized. Moreover, the Duchess of Ding didn't like the third girl of the Luo family, so it was really hard to say what would happen in the future. Thinking of this, she, who had been embarrassed because of being pointed out by others, felt relieved. She clenched the purse at her waist, in which there was a warm jade half the size of a palm. Miss Shen was confident, but she didn't know the most important point. That was, the man she liked happened to like the third girl of the Luo family. 99% of the women in the backyard had a foothold because of their husbands. Even if she entered the Duc d'Ingwafu, Sun Yilin would probably want to strangle her to death when he saw her. Wan Wan, what do you think about this matter? What else is there to think about? Of course. Jingwan looked at Madame Luo and paused. Grandmother, you can deal with it as you see fit. Okay, I understand. This marriage was bound to be annulled, and Madame Luo also saw the same meaning in Jingwan's eyes. So it couldn't be better. Madame Ding had been prepared. As soon as she received the news, she calmly came to the Luo family with people. When the wife of the right governor heard the news, she was stunned at first and then burned with anger but soon calmed down. How to protect the reputation of the Shin family to the greatest extent and how to get the greatest benefits from it. Quickly send someone to the yamen to report this matter to the master. At this time Luo Peishan had already received the news. In fact, before he came out, Madame Luo had already sent someone to inform him. The content of the message was that a girl came to the door and begged the third girl to give her a way out. In fact, whether it was Madame Luo's mother or the errand boy, they didn't quite understand Madame Luo's intention. She directly came to the master without knowing anything about the situation. However, Luo Peishan understood everything after hearing this. So, Lord Luo, who still had nothing to do for the time being, openly left early. Since entering the palace early in the morning, Sun Yilin inexplicably felt a little irritable. No matter what he did, he couldn't calm down. As time went by, this situation didn't get better but became more and more serious. He covered his heart, which was full of panic and uneasiness. He always felt that something was going to happen, something very serious. Luchingdi saw that he was distracted again and frowned. He really couldn't stand it any. Yilin, are you not feeling well? Sun Yilin came back to his senses and hurriedly got up to apologize. Your Majesty, please forgive me. Luchingdi waved his hand. If you're not feeling well, you can go back first. Sun Yilin thought for a moment. It was good to go out of the palace and see what happened. Anyway, he couldn't do anything in his current state. Thank you, Your Majesty. Sun Yilin tidied up, bowed to Luchingdi and left. Sun Yilin went home as fast as he could. The gatekeeper was very surprised to see him come home at this time, but his eyes were full of a different meaning. If there was nothing, Sun Yilin would write his name upside down. What happened? The gatekeeper stammered and couldn't say 1, 2, 3. Speak quickly. Sun Yilin said sternly. The gatekeeper was shocked. People say that people who don't get angry are the scariest when they get angry. He hurriedly spilled the beans and explained the matter clearly. After Sun Yilin heard, his vision went black and he almost fell to the ground. The first thing that came to his mind wasn't when he slept with a girl and made her pregnant, but that he might lose Jingwan. His servant hurriedly reached out to help him. Young master, are you okay? Sun Yilin pushed his servant away. My mother went to the Luo family? The gatekeeper hurriedly nodded. Madam went to the Luo family for a while. He should be here soon. Sun Yilin turned to leave. Just as he stepped out of the door, he turned back and walked quickly to old Madame Sun's courtyard. Obviously, old Madame Sun already knew about this matter and was sitting in the corridor, lost in thought. Sun Yilin walked over, lifted his clothes and knelt down. Grandmother, don't beg me. It's useless. I can't help you. It's not like third Miss Luo has to marry no one but you. Your mother is just a prospective mother-in-law now, but she has to keep making other girls unhappy and humiliating them. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't marry into the family. Probably only your mother is self-righteous and thinks that no matter what she does, she can't ruin this marriage. Sun Yilin's heart was filled with hatred and pain. Grandson will take his leave. He got up and hurried to the Luo family. The wife of the right governor and the wife of Duke Ding arrived at the Luo family almost at the same time. The two of them did a good job of saving face, but their eyes had already fought back and forth several times. Not only were the two of them on different sides, but they were also sworn enemies. Old Madame Luo's gaze fell on the girl who was still kneeling. The Shin family really knows how to raise girls. Shameless, climbing into her son's bed while he was drunk, bitch. That's not as good as the wife of Duke Ding's son. Wantonly seducing girls. Where was his upbringing? The #1 young master in the capital, the #1 gentleman in the capital. The wife of Duke Ding knew some of the truth, but she couldn't say it out loud. She had to pretend that she was the only one who knew about this matter, or else it would expose what she had done. Please enter the house, madams. A mother next to old Madame Luo also had a cold expression. I think Miss Shin is probably willing to get up now. The Luo family can't do something like forcing an outsider to have an abortion medicine. The wife of the right governor was somewhat embarrassed at this moment. No matter what, this was still a member of their Shin family. She really wanted to slap her to death. A bitch was a bitch actually looking for trouble. Get up, who are you waiting for to help you? When she turned to the mother again, she knew that she was in the wrong, so she put on a smile on her face. Please lead the way. Miss Shin had been kneeling for so long that her legs had long gone numb. When she got up, she staggered, but no one reached out to help her. She stood up 2 or 3 times. Feeling a faint pain in her lower abdomen, she couldn't help but panic. Before she came, she was afraid that something would happen, so she specially took pregnancy medicine. If the child was gone, she would be completely finished. Madam, my stomach hurts. It's good that she's dead. Once and for all. Bear with it. The wife of the right governor said coldly. Miss Shin's face turned pale. She was resentful and angry. She couldn't help but look at Duchess Ding. Unfortunately, Duchess Ding didn't even look at her at this time. The reason why she helped Miss Shin was just to make Jingwan lose face. As for the child in her belly, it was not legitimate. It was just a bastard. As for the possibility that it was not her son, she didn't think that would happen. Miss Shin couldn't help but feel hatred in her heart. The 2 parties were led into the gate, but before the door was closed, they heard the rapid sound of horse hooves. Whoosh, Duchess Ding said softly and immediately turned around. When she saw her son turn over and dismount from the horse, she was angry and guilty. She was angry because he still valued his fiancée more than anyone else. She was guilty because if someone found out what she had done, Yilin, are you not used to the palace at this time? Why are you here? Sun Yilin looked at Duchess Ding expressionlessly. In fact, he wanted to ask her, do you think everyone is a fool? This matter did not require any evidence at all. Anyone with half a brain would be able to figure out who had done it. He looked away from Duchess Ding and met Miss Shin's eager eyes. I don't even know when I slept with a woman and got pregnant with a bastard. The killing intent in Sun Yilin's eyes and his rude words were like a basin of ice water poured on Miss Shin's heart. The eagerness in her eyes quickly receded and tears gathered in her eyes. However, she bit her lip tightly and didn't cry. The wife of the right governor wanted to satirize Sun Yilin, but she didn't say anything in the end. You better go in first. Seeing Sun Yilin appear together, the Luo family was surprised. Well, they were all here. Chapter 135. Madame Luo patted Jingwan's hand and said, Wan, you can go back first. Jingwan nodded and stood up. I'll take my leave. After taking 2 steps, she paused again and said, Sister-in-law, come with me. She held Sun Yijia's hand with a little force. Sun Yijia finally left with her, but her eyes were always on Duchess Ding. There was unspeakable pain and endless coldness in her eyes. Then, it became indifferent little by little until her sight was completely blocked. It seemed that she had been completely isolated from her feelings for her. At this moment, Sun Yijia no longer had any hope for her mother. In her heart she was nothing. Duchess Ding's heart couldn't help but tremble because of Sun Yijia's eyes. She didn't quite understand what was going on, but she was also quite angry. Was that the way a daughter should look at her mother? Jingwan's departure in Sun Yilin's eyes was like a farewell. He subconsciously wanted to chase after her, but he was blocked. Miss Shin looked at Sun Yilin's painful appearance and her heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have made a big mistake. With how much he cared about his fiancée, even if she entered Duke Dinggua's mansion, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to get away with it. She squeezed the purse at her waist tightly. How could she not know that she had been used by Duchess Ding? What should she do now? Should she give up and win back a little bit of his affection, or should she become his woman even if he hated her to death? She felt the pain in her lower abdomen become more intense. Miss Shin's heart was in a mess, but her official mother, the wife of the right governor, was very clear-headed. Without saying a word, she apologized to Madame Luo first and lowered her posture. No matter how they argued with Duke Dinggua's mansion for the Luo family, they were indeed in the wrong. If she still couldn't recognize this at this time, then her position as the wife of the right governor would be in vain. However, she used to think that Duchess Ding was on par with her. Through this matter, she suddenly felt that it was beneath her to compete with her in the past. That's right. Duchess Ding's role in this matter was also clear to her in a very short time. The attitude of the wife of the right governor's wife made Madame Luo feel a little better, but only a little. His icy gaze landed on Miss Shen. Bring a chair for Miss Shen and remember to put a soft cushion on it. Then call for a doctor to take Miss Shen's pulse. Otherwise, if anything happens to the child in her stomach, it might spread that our Luo family is overbearing and intolerant. This girl hasn't even married into her husband's family yet, but she's already starting to make a move on an outsider. Madame Luo's words were not polite at all. It was definitely not just one or two people who were embarrassed. The one who hated her the most was Sun Yilin. He still didn't believe that this was his child. He usually didn't drink much. It was true that he was easily drunk, but he had never been completely drunk. Moreover, whether in the city or out of the city, he was always by his side. How could this daughter of a concubine of the Shen family have the ability to come to his side? Not to mention that the people around him had always been loyal to him. Even if they had been bribed, did they think that he was dead? Someone had climbed into his bed and slept with him. How could he not have any impression of it? Madame Luo waved her hand. You don't have to say anything. You should know what's going on in your heart. Your marriage with Wan Wan was also our family's fault in the first place. It was they who chose Sun Yilin and took the initiative to find him. Sun Yilin had already heard the implied meaning. In an instant his face turned pale. Madame Luo, I don't know this girl at all. The child in her stomach can't be mine. Sun Yilin was anxious to explain. His eyes were weak and his voice was pleading. He didn't want to be sentenced to death like this. It wasn't easy for him to get married. He didn't want to lose it because of some inexplicable reason. He clearly didn't do anything. Seeing him like this, Madame Luo's heart couldn't bear it for a moment. However, this marriage must be cancelled. At the beginning of the marriage discussion, Duchess Ding's actions made people very dissatisfied. In the end, how long had it been? It hadn't even been 10 days and she started to make trouble again. In this way, if Wan Wan really married over, could she still have a peaceful day? Besides, if they didn't withdraw, Madame Luo couldn't guarantee that Jin Qinhuang wouldn't directly kill Sun Yilin. After all, his previous fiancés, except for Sun Yijia, didn't have a good ending. And Sun Yijia was able to withdraw unscathed, most likely because of Wan Wan's relationship. It was enough to show how ruthless Jin Qinhuang was to people who blocked his path. And Sun Yilin's denial to Miss Chen was undoubtedly a sharp blade that directly pierced her heart. It hurt so much that she trembled. Lin Gongzi, it doesn't matter if you deny me, but the child is indeed yours. Sun Yilin looked at her coldly. Mine? What evidence do you have to prove that it's mine? There's a red mole on your inner thigh. Miss Chen blurted out. As soon as these words came out, Sun Yilin's expression twisted for a moment, which proved that what she said was true. Everyone subconsciously thought that the child should be Sun Yilin's. After all, such a private place, how could people who didn't have intimate relations know about it? So what, there's not just one or two people who know about this. Of course, the mole on his leg was there when he was born. Not to mention his own mother and wet nurse, there were also many servant girls. When he was a child, who didn't know about it? Miss Chen seemed to have no way to refute and tears fell down her face. In any case, you're the recognized #1 Gongzi in the capital. Eating and not admitting it? Although she's a cheap girl, she's still surnamed Chen. Could it be that Lin Gongzi thinks that our Chen family is easy to bully and doesn't want to take responsibility for deceiving our family's miss? The wife of the right governor coldly said. Then she looked at her concubine's daughter. You were so easily pulled into bed. Didn't you give you anything? Her gaze swept over the purse at Miss Chen's waist. It had always been in her hand. It was impossible to say that it wasn't important. What is it? Take it out. The wife of the right governor's wife's meaning was very obvious, and her eyes were also threatening. The wife of the right governor's wife's words instantly made Duchess Ding explode. It's clearly your family's miss who shamelessly climbed into my son's bed. How dare you make false accusations? You're the wife of the governor after all. Aren't you a little too shameless? If it was said that the wife of the right governor's wife didn't understand how this child came about, she could roughly guess. She didn't believe that Sun Yilin had taken the initiative to deceive her, the daughter of a concubine. It wasn't that she said that this little bitch of hers really didn't have the qualifications to be liked by Sun Yilin. However, at this time, no matter what considerations she had to make false accusations. Who's the shameless one? So what if she was a little shameless? It was better than some people's brains being muddled. Did you hear that? Take it out. Miss Chen squeezed the purse again and again. There must be something important in it. She didn't care about her official mother's threat and just stared at Sun Yilin foolishly. However, there was only disgust and deep hatred in Sun Yilin's eyes. He was so ruthless. She opened the purse and took out the things inside. Seeing the warm jade that had been with him for more than 10 years, Sun Yilin's mind buzzed. He turned his head to look at his mother. This was given to me by young Master Lin. He said that this was a birthday gift from the former Duke Ding when he was 1 year old. It's an extremely rare piece of warm jade with the word Lin engraved on it. Therefore, this woman who had been ruthlessly hurt was also willing to go all out. She originally wanted to take a step back, but Sun Yilin's gaze fiercely stabbed her. Duchess Ding was about to go crazy with anger. How dare she? How dare this little bitch say that? Little bitch, how dare you talk nonsense? She stepped forward and wanted to give her a slap. However, the wife of the governor of the right was not someone to be trifled with. She quickly grabbed her wrist and said, "What's wrong? Your son gave away his personal belongings to someone else, and you're angry at the innocent?" Sun Yilin was the coldest person in his heart now. Although he didn't keep that piece of jade with him every day, he had it with him for at least half a month. He just changed it 3 days ago, but now it had become a love token in the hands of a woman he didn't know. She even said that she was pregnant with his child. How ridiculous it was. And the most ridiculous thing was that it was most likely given by his own mother. Was she really his biological mother? How could she do this? Sun Yilin wanted to cry, but he couldn't cry at all. Grandmother was right. Third Miss Luo didn't have to marry only him. Even if she was deeply in love with him, there was still 1 or 2 years before the wedding date. His mother humiliated others again and again. No one would marry into the family, unless it was a pure marriage alliance and didn't consider the family's daughter at all. But was it the Luo family? Not at all. It was clearly their Duke Dingfu who wanted to rope in the Luo family. It was clearly his deep feelings for the other family's daughter. Old Lady Luo looked on coldly. She didn't expect that Duchess Ding's opinion of Wan Wan would be so big. So even if this Miss Chen didn't come to the door, even if Jin Qinhuang didn't come, Wan Wan absolutely couldn't marry into Duke Dingfu. The darling that she held in the palm of her hand like a pearl was not to be humiliated and humiliated. Old Lady Luo's anger at this moment was unprecedentedly high. Her expression became colder and colder. With a gentle push of her hand, the teacup beside her fell to the ground and shattered with a bang. It also made the two people who were tearing at each other forget about it and couldn't help but withdraw their hands at the same time. Old Lady Luo wiped her hands with a brocade handkerchief, appearing indifferent. "I'm sorry, my hand slipped. The doctor hasn't arrived yet? Quickly invite him in and let Miss Chen take a good look. In any case, he is Duke Ding's grandson." Duchess Ding only felt great humiliation, but at this time she suddenly couldn't speak. Not only because of Old Lady Luo's expression, but also because she inadvertently saw the hatred in her son's eyes. Chapter 136. Luo Peishan was accompanied by Xin Shihan, the governor of the right. When he reported the news to Luo Peishan, he didn't know the specific situation, so he didn't rush back. His speed was about the same as his daily trip. Xin Shihan was different. Although he received the news much later than Luo Peishan, he was faster. They almost met outside the gate of the Luo family. Luo Peishan chuckled, the governor of the right's daughter. Not bad, not bad. How could Xin Shihan not hear the sarcasm in Luo Peishan's words? But he didn't dare to talk back. First, he knew that he was in the wrong and couldn't help being weak. Second, he had seen Luo Peishan's power. If he dared to talk back, he might be scolded by Luo Peishan without any vulgarities. Therefore, he had to be extremely careful along the way. Like his wife, Xin Shihan was calculating how many benefits he could get from Ding General Manor. But now, the most important thing was to appease Luo Peishan's anger against their Xin family. Compared with being the target of Lord Luo's attack at any time and place in the future, he would rather not get any benefits. That wicked girl did such a thing. It was said that men were in charge of external affairs and women were in charge of internal affairs. It was reasonable to say that this marriage was generally handled by the women of the inner residence. But when it involved the face and interests of several families and even factional struggles, it was not the women of the inner residence who had the final say. With the arrival of the two leaders, the atmosphere changed again. It seemed that Ding General Manor seemed to be a little weak. "Madam, what's the matter?" "Tell me," Luo Peixan said to Madame Luo. Madame Luo first signaled the family doctor to take Miss Shin's pulse, and then briefly explained the matter. "I see." Luo Peixan stroked his beard and glanced at Duchess Ding meaningfully. "Then there's nothing more to say. Let's break off the engagement." He made the final decision. Not to mention the other two families, even the Luo family was very surprised. In the end, at most, Sun Yilin took Miss Shin as a concubine and the Shin family apologized to the Luo family. It should not affect the marriage between Sun Yilin and Jingwan. Other than Madame Luo, who was still sitting quietly, Sun Yilin was not surprised at all. In fact, when he first heard about this matter, he already had this premonition. He knew very well how much the elders of the Luo family treasured Jingwan. He remembered every word his little sister said to him, and he would never forget the promise he made to her. However, it had only been a few days and reality had given him a tight slap. Sun Yilin's body swayed. He didn't know if his legs were weak or something else, but he knelt on the ground. "Lord Luo, is there really no way to salvage the situation?" Anyone could feel his pain and despair at this time. Duchess Ding was about to go crazy. Her son had been a proud son of God since he was born. He was neither servile nor overbearing in front of the emperor. He had never been so embarrassed and even servile as he was now. Because of this little bitch of the Luo family, he had broken his bottom line again and again and made himself look bad several times. She stepped forward and glared at Luo Peixan while grabbing Sun Yilin's arm, trying to pull him up. "Isn't your Luo family going too far?" Luo Peixan laughed, but his eyes were as cold as ice. "Duchess Ding also knows the word going too far. Why didn't you think of this word when you bullied my good grandson? Now you haven't done anything to your son but you're going too far. Do you really think the Luo family is easy to bully?" Sun Yilin brushed away Duchess Ding's hand. "Lord Luo, I can leave Duke Dingwa's mansion. I can set up another family." In fact, after listening to his sister's words, he wanted to live alone with Jingwan outside after getting married, but it was not so serious as to set up another family. It could be seen that he was now forced to a dead end. Originally, he thought that he had 2 years to plan this matter, but he was happy for less than 10 days before God completely cut off his path. If Luo Peixan's words were surprising, Sun Yilin's words were absolutely shocking. However, most people didn't understand. How did this relate to setting up another family? Only a few people who could see through this matter clearly knew the extent of Sun Yilin's despair for him to say such words. This time he was really buried alive by his own mother. Duchess Ding was trembling with anger because of Sun Yilin. She raised her hand and slapped him. "Bastard, you actually said such unfilial words for a woman. I raised you for more than 10 years in vain." Sun Yilin tilted his head and a trace of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. It could be seen that Duchess Ding was so angry that she slapped him hard. However, he didn't look at Duchess Ding. She was also his mother. Otherwise, because she was his mother, Luo Peixan was stunned. He ignored Duchess Ding and looked at Sun Yilin with warm eyes. He sighed. "Don't say such stupid things. You should know that it's impossible. No one will allow it." If he really did that, Duchess Ding would probably make a scene. Not to mention the third girl, the whole Luo family would be in chaos. "You are a good boy, but..." He had a mother who was a hindrance. The harem was a woman's world. If her good granddaughter married into Duke Ding's mansion, she would be tortured by her. If she dared to resist, she would be labeled as unfilial. It was not the third girl's fault but her fault. According to Duchess Ding's current attitude, she might know that family scandals should not be aired in public. If the third girl was unfilial, it would definitely be a hot topic. In this way, how could she have a foothold in the future? Duchess Ding looked at Luo Peixan sarcastically. "Lord Luo is good at talking now. It's just that his mouth is sharp, but his education for the younger generation is not good. The girl he taught is a vixen. Not only did she seduce my son like this, but she also made him a jealous woman. She doesn't tolerate anyone at all." At this moment, Luo Peixan couldn't help but be furious. He restrained himself and didn't slap her directly. He was a man. If he fought with a woman who was from another family and a woman appointed by the imperial court, it would be wrong even if it wasn't wrong. But Madame Luo didn't have that scruple. She had been enduring until now. As the saying went, there was no need to endure anymore. She got up, took a few steps forward and raised her hand to slap her. Duchess Ding was stunned. She had never suffered such a loss since she was born. She raised her hand and was about to hit back. Not to mention that Luo Peishan didn't allow it. Sun Yilin also stood up to stop Duchess Ding. Duchess Ding wanted to push Sun Yilin away like a crazy woman. Madame Luo stood behind Luo Peishan, and her eyes were as sharp as knives. Come on, beat her out for me. Beat her out. I'd like to see who dares. Enough. Sun Yilin said coldly. Duchess Ding looked at her son in disbelief. His mother had suffered a loss. Not only did he not help, but he also dared to say such words. What did you say? I said that's enough. Sun Yilin stood in front of Duchess Ding. He was a head taller than her and looked down at her without any warmth in his eyes. Duchess Ding was stunned and suddenly didn't know what to do. Sun Yilin grabbed her wrist and pulled her out forcefully. He couldn't tolerate his mother's slander of Jingwan. She was really beaten out, was she not ashamed enough? Duchess Ding wanted to break free from Sun Yilin's hand, but it was like a pair of pliers that she couldn't break free. Sun Yilin walked very quickly. With such a mother, he was ashamed to stand in the Luo family's territory. Duchess Ding couldn't keep up with his speed. She stumbled and looked very embarrassed. She only felt that she had lost all her face today. After leaving the Luo family's gate, Sun Yilin didn't need Duchess Ding to say anything. He directly threw away Duchess Ding's hand, took his horse, turned over and waved his whip. At this time, Duchess Ding's hair was a little messy. In addition, there was a red palm print on it which surprised the people outside. Duchess Ding was angry and hateful. She didn't dare to stay any longer and hurriedly got into the carriage. The servants brought by Duchess Ding didn't dare to breathe at this time. They wished they could find a hole to hide in. In the Luo family's mansion, the Shin family was still awkwardly stored there. No one had expected that things would turn out like this. Lord Shin, you should take your wife and miss back. It's your business how you make trouble with Duke Ding's mansion. Don't involve our Luo family again. Luo Peishan coldly sent him away. Shin Shuhan repeatedly apologized and said that he would come to apologize on that day. Luo Peishan waved his hand impatiently. From the moment she entered the door to the moment she went out, Miss Shin's pulse was only taken. Other than that, she could only endure the pain. After leaving the Luo family's gate, Shin Shuhan glanced at Miss Shin. You are very bold. Miss Shin couldn't help but tremble. Facing her own father, she was scared to death. She no longer had the courage to kneel in front of the Luo family's gate and beg. Although Shin Shuhan was a military general, the education he received since childhood and his own thoughts were typical of a scholar official. He paid attention to the hierarchy of the concubines. He had many concubines and many children, but he always respected his wife and valued his sons. He was a little better to the sons of the concubines. As for the daughters of the concubines, he basically ignored them. If his wife was cruel, none of the daughters of the concubines could live. However, the wife of the right governor was more open-minded, because she knew very well that Shin Shuhan only respected her and didn't love her. His heart was filled with his childhood sweetheart, his cousin, the current imperial concubine Su. The Shin family wholeheartedly assisted Prince Rui, which was not without this layer of reason. Her status was stable, so she didn't expect love. As for the children of the concubines, she didn't like them, but she didn't treat them harshly. It was still useful to use them for marriage. A good marriage was also a great help for her son. When you go back, explain the ins and outs of the matter clearly. If you are smart, you should know whether to tell the truth or lie. Shin Shuhan's tone was still as usual. But it was because of this that Miss Shin became more and more afraid. She didn't expect it to end like this. She originally thought that Duchess Ding was dissatisfied with her future daughter-in-law, so she didn't lose face. And she could get what she wanted, so she came to the Luo family. Although she also thought about damaging the reputation of the other girls of the Shin family, her father and the others would always find a way to redeem it. However, Duchess Ding turned hostile and refused to admit it. She was even more shocked by Master Lin's infatuation with the Luo family's third daughter. Not only that, the Luo family's love for her daughter was something she didn't even dare to imagine. How could a person like Master Lin break off the engagement just like that? At this time, the backyard of the Luo family was strangely quiet. The two masters with the highest status were in a state of anger, so the servants naturally didn't dare to speak carelessly. If they were heard, they would definitely suffer. Today's Luo Jingxiang's return was originally a happy occasion, but they didn't expect it to turn out like this. In fact, many people suspected that the other party probably deliberately chose this day to come to the Luo family. Jingwan and Sun Yijia both heard that Jingwan didn't do anything, but Sun Yijia couldn't help crying. Jingwan hurriedly wiped her tears with a brocade handkerchief. Don't cry, don't cry. I didn't cry. Why are you crying? Sun Yijia reached out and hugged Jingwan, crying uncontrollably. Jingwan let her hug her and patted her back gently. She knew that Duchess Ding's actions hurt Sun Yijia a lot. After this time she was afraid that she would be completely desperate. To be honest, it was really unexpected that Duchess Ding would do this. What was she thinking? Sun Yijia stopped crying with difficulty, but her eyes were red. Sister Wan, don't hate me. Don't dislike me. She has never considered me. He has never cared about me. From then on, Sun Yijia wouldn't step half a step into Duke Ding's mansion unless it was necessary. It was even equivalent to unilaterally cutting off ties with Duke Ding's mansion. Everyone was well aware of who Sun Yijia was referring to. I've said it before. You are you and she is she. Sister-in-law, you just have to live a good life with my third brother. Sun Yijia nodded. She knew very well that if it were another family she would have been isolated and helpless. Little sister Wan, my fifth brother isn't that kind of person. That child is definitely not his. Furthermore, he always has people by his side. How could he be so easily tricked by others? Furthermore, he knows his own situation and has always been very careful with his belongings. The people around him definitely wouldn't dare to do anything like stealing. However, as the saying goes, guard day and night. The family. Sun Yijia couldn't finish her sentence. How ironic. You trampled on your future daughter-in-law's face. Didn't you think about your son's face? Or did you really think that no matter how embarrassing your son was, he would always be in high demand? Jingwan was silent. She was his mother, the person closest to him. She had always doted on and protected him like a precious pearl. As his son he could guard against anyone but her, right? Not to mention that she had only taken something behind his back. Even if she had asked for it in front of him, she would at most feel strange and ask for it. She could easily dismiss you with a casual sentence. She had never done anything before. Could you suspect that she had ulterior motives? Absolutely not. No matter how smart and alert a person was, they would fall for it. Therefore, Sun Yilin was really very innocent in this matter. He had been schemed against by his mother too miserably. Sister Wan, it's not that I don't want you to break off the engagement. It's best if you break off the engagement. I just don't want you to misunderstand fifth brother. For all he treats you, it's probably nothing if the whole world misunderstands him. But if you misunderstand him, he will definitely feel more pain than being stabbed with a knife. Fifth brother was already very pitiful. Sun Yijia didn't want to rub salt in his wound anymore. This salt especially couldn't be sprinkled by Sister Wan. Otherwise he would really be in so much pain that he wanted to die. The siblings were born noble and were favored by the heavens. However, now that they had fallen to such a state, everything happened to be brought to them by the person who originally doted on them the most. What could be more ironic and painful in the world than this? She was lucky. Not only did she not fall into the mire, but she also obtained happiness. However, her fifth brother lacked that luck. She really didn't dare to imagine what would happen to fifth brother in the future. I know. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game clearly. Although Jingwan was in the game, she was not bewitched by Sun Yilin. Therefore she saw the whole thing very clearly. Sun Yijia saw that Jingwan was calm and composed. He sighed silently in his heart. In the end, fifth brother and her were not fated to be together. The servants of Duke Dingwa's mansion first saw the fifth young master return in a hurry with a red mark on his face. When Madame returned, they watched her sneak back to her courtyard. The servants who followed her didn't dare to breathe loudly. This trip to the Luo family was probably so satisfying. The people in the other rooms were gloating. However, they all knew very well that now was not the time to go to the door and watch a show. If they were not careful, they would get into trouble. Duchess Ding changed her clothes, redid her makeup, applied medicine on her face and covered it with makeup powder. However, because it was a little swollen, it was still very obvious. She hated it to death in her heart and was even more depressed. Knowing that Sun Yilin was in his own courtyard, she looked at the bruises on his wrist. Her good son was an ingrate. She rushed over angrily. However, she didn't expect to be stopped at the gate of the courtyard. The furious Duchess Ding slapped him. The manservant guarding the gate of the courtyard was also depressed. It was an unexpected disaster, but he didn't dare to continue to stop her. Sun Yilin stood by the flowers in a daze. He didn't change his clothes and didn't apply medicine on his face. "You unfilial son, how dare you let someone stop me outside? You're really strong. How dare you do such a thing?" Sun Yilin didn't pay attention to her at all, let alone salute and greet her. Duchess Ding's chest heaved up and down. She really felt that she was about to die of anger. "I'm talking to you. Do you hear me? Look, what's there to see? It's just these flowers and plants all day long. I'll burn them all with fire." Sun Yilin finally looked at her. His eyes were unusually cold. After looking at her for a moment, he said, "I won't stop you. I won't let you take my things and give them to those women who came out of nowhere." "What nonsense are you talking about? What do you mean I took your things?" Duchess Ding couldn't help but feel guilty about this. "Mother, do you think everyone is a fool? Do you think I can't guess what you did in it?" "I didn't." Duchess Ding hurriedly denied it. "How?" Sun Yilin laughed sarcastically and with indescribable bitterness. "You know best whether you did or not. I don't even know what Jingwan did to make you hate her. In order to humiliate her, you could admit that the bastard of an unknown origin was your son's child. You even took my things to her as proof. When you did this, did you think of me? Now the engagement is going to be annulled. She won't marry into Duke Ding's mansion anymore. Are you finally satisfied? It's best if it's annulled. That shameless vixen, you used to listen to me, but since you met her, you've become disobedient and unfilial. You even made me prepare to propose marriage when I didn't know anything about it. What do you think of me? Also, with her low status, how can she be a match for you? Now I can see that she's jealous and doesn't tolerate anyone at all. I don't dare to have such a daughter-in-law." "Annulled the engagement? What right do they have to annul the engagement? If anything, it should be annulled by us. What right do they have to criticize my son? What's wrong with my son having a woman? Men have 3 wives and 4 concubines since ancient times. They still dare to annul the engagement. What do they take our Duke Ding's mansion for?" Duchess Ding kept saying that she wanted to accuse Jingwan of being jealous and intolerant. In the end, she just wanted to cover up what she had done. Even if the engagement was annulled, she wanted to pour dirty water on Jingwan. At this moment, Sun Yilin really felt that it was unprecedentedly ridiculous. "Is this the reason why you're targeting Jingwan? Am I your son or a puppet in your hands? Do I have to put everything first? I suddenly feel that my father is too fickle and you can't catch him. As your son, I'm obedient to you in everything, so you have the illusion that you've shifted your affection. You can't tolerate me paying more attention to anyone than you? When I get married and have children, they are bound to become the people I care more about. At that time, mother, will you be jealous of your grandson?" Duchess Ding's face turned green and white. Sun Yilin was right and she didn't know how to refute, or she was so angry that she couldn't speak. Sun Yilin looked at the lush flowers and trees in front of him again. "One more thing, mother, you don't have to deceive yourself. The Luo family didn't annul the engagement because of that inexplicable child, but because of you. They didn't choose me but you. I said don't treat others as fools. It's too obvious who will support the daughter of a concubine of the Shun family. Mother, it's you who ruined my good marriage." Sun Yilin only felt that his eyes were sore, but he just couldn't cry. "I also feel that maybe my little sister and I are not your biological children. You brought us back from somewhere else and we are the children of your enemy." "Sun Yilin," Duchess Ding's voice was unusually sharp. How can you say such heart-wrenching words?" Her eyes were red and she only felt a burst of pain in her heart. "Isn't it? Otherwise, why do you hate us so much and can't bear to see us well? I've only seen mothers who would do anything to fulfill their son's wishes. I've never seen a mother who would scheme and obstruct her son just because he showed concern for his fiancée. In order to embarrass her son's fiancée, she didn't even care about her son at all. Mother, do you think I contradicted you, hurt you with my words and hurt your heart with my words? But do you know that my heart is bleeding now? It's you who stabbed it again and again with a knife. It's now full of holes." As if to verify what he said, Sun Yilin covered his chest and his body swayed. Poof, he directly spat out a mouthful of blood. Yilin, this sudden change scared Duchess Ding out of her wits. How could she still be angry? She hurriedly reached out to support him. "Where are they? Where are they? Call a doctor quickly." Sun Yilin steadied his body, brushed away Duchess Ding's hand, and wiped his lips indifferently. The red blood on his hand was particularly glaring. My little sister is the daughter-in-law of the Luo family. If you were in the Luo family's shoes, how would you treat my little sister? You should thank Jingwan. If it weren't for her, my little sister would have been thrown into a corner by the entire Luo family. If they were more ruthless, they might have asked their brother-in-law to divorce his wife directly. In that case, they would probably have taken my little sister's life directly. Don't say things like whether the Luo family dares or not. So what if Duke Ding's mansion is a duke's mansion? Do they really think they can cover the sky with one hand? Since Lord Luo could sit in the position of Minister of the Ministry of Appointments, his means were naturally not trivial. If he was ruthless, he could definitely tear off a piece of flesh from Duke Ding's mansion and make Duke Ding's mansion suffer a great loss. My little sister is our blood relative, but as her maternal family, not only can we not help her, but we also hold her back again and again. Her blood relatives don't love her and don't care about her. As a newly married woman, she has to rely on her sister-in-law to stand on her feet. The one who loves her the most is her sister-in-law, but her sister-in-law is regarded as an enemy by her own mother. I always thought that you were reasonable and open-minded. You could also see the situation clearly. You were a qualified mistress and a qualified virtuous wife. I also thought that you still doted on my little sister very much, and I thought that you loved me the most. But it turned out that you cared about yourself the most. You didn't allow others to ignore you or disobey you. You didn't care about those who couldn't be controlled by you at the beginning, such as my father and the Empress, but you could control them, such as my little sister and me. Once we crossed your bottom line, you seemed to have gone crazy. You lost your mind, disregarded the consequences, and only thought about your own pleasure. It seemed that all the unbearable things had been exposed and exposed under the bright sun. Duchess Ding gritted her teeth and stared at Sun Yilin, as if she had completely forgotten that he had vomited blood. Unfilial son, Sun Yilin acted as if he hadn't heard her. Since you can't allow me to care about others more than you, and you are my mother after all. You gave birth to me and raised me for more than 10 years, so what if I fulfill your wish? I won't marry in my life. You don't have to worry about me turning my elbow to an outsider and abandoning my mother when I have a wife. If you want to burn these flowers and plants, then burn them. After Sun Yilin finished speaking, he directly walked out. Duchess Ding looked at Sun Yilin's back that was getting farther and farther away. She only felt dizzy and fainted. Her body went limp and she fell to the ground. Madam, the servant's exclamation made Sun Yilin stop and wipe his face. In the end, he turned around and quickly returned. He carried Duchess Ding in his arms and sent her back to the house. He was not in a hurry to find a doctor. The doctor that Duchess Ding had asked someone to find for him was about to arrive. In the end, he took advantage of this time to tidy himself up and apply medicine on his face. Compared with Qin Jingmin, Sun Yilin was obviously more mature and had a stronger tolerance. But at the same time, it meant that it was more difficult for him to change his mind, and it was difficult to turn back once he had decided on something. Duchess Ding woke up soon after the doctor gave her an injection. When she saw Sun Yilin beside her, she couldn't help crying. Yilin. Sun Yilin's face was calm. He glanced at Duchess Ding indifferently. Since you're awake, go back and have a rest. Duchess Ding saw that Sun Yilin was about to leave again. Yilin, are you really going to distance yourself from me because of a vixen? Sun Yilin stared at her. I just like the third Miss Luo. Is she a vixen? Then during the time when father admired mother, was mother also a vixen? Don't ruin our last mother-son relationship. Don't make me not want to go back to this home. Don't make me not want to call you mother again. Why was she still not awake at this point? Didn't she know that her position as Duchess Ding was in danger? It was very likely that she would only exist in name. Didn't she know that the real trouble was still to come? He was basically sure that the Shen family would insist that the child was his. Those who were hostile to him would take this opportunity to smear him and reduce his influence among the scholars. The Empress might throw her mother out completely in order to protect him, but that would also damage the reputation of Ding General Manor. The best way was to push the blame to the Shen family. However, once Miss Shen committed suicide, even if it was just for show, public opinion would be biased toward the Shen family. After all, people were born to favor the weak. There was also the Luo family. There was still a glimmer of possibility of redeeming the engagement. That was, if his mother didn't exist in Ding General Manor, the possibility was really small. Even if this matter was completely exposed, at most she would be criticized. Other than that, she really couldn't be pulled down from this position. In fact, this glimmer of hope was equivalent to no hope. Sun Yilin only felt a sudden pain in his temples on both sides. Everything was going well, but it also seemed to be in a mess. However, the only thing he was sure of was that he didn't want to deal with the engagement so quickly. He would delay it day by day. In this way he could still deceive himself that Jingwan was still his fiancée. Duchess Ding looked at his tired, painful and even desperate face. In the end she felt distressed. Did she really do something wrong? Yilin. You're tuning in to the Biao's Wuxiao Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.